Chapter 1557. At this time, the mentality of Dong Chuanfu and the others had completely changed. They were thinking about two things in their hearts. One was whether they would die or not. If the two sides didn't come to an agreement and went to war, they would probably become the first batch of martyrs. At this time, they had completely forgotten their identity. They were here to negotiate. Rather than placing their hopes on others, they might as well work hard themselves. The second thing they thought about was the change in their mentality. The three provincial kings were truly crazy and wanted to kill them all. They only hoped that the five-star army could avenge them and kill all of the three provincial armies. At this moment, they finally understood the actions of the five-star army in Bangla. They even thought that the five-star army didn't kill enough to intimidate the enemy. Otherwise, why would the three provincial kings look down on them? No, it should be said that they were ignoring them. Everyone knew how to talk high and mighty. Their words didn't have any substance and wouldn't resonate with others. However, if they were in the same situation, they probably wouldn't say any lies, big words, or empty words. From this, it could be seen that Yang Qindong brought these 18 people with different views on war here. The effect was already evident. As the saying goes, if you don't manage the household, you don't know the cost of firewood and rice. Presumably, if they could survive, their opinions would definitely change if there was a war in the future. It was even possible for them to become staunch supporters of war. From this point alone, Yang Qindong's arrangement was correct. In the future, if someone wanted to talk about the cruelty of war and wanted to use benevolence or universal love to talk about it, they only needed to follow the example. Presumably, those dissenting voices would be completely suppressed. Dong Chuanfu and the others spent every day trembling in fear. They didn't know what would happen in the next second. It was like when the door to the courtyard was suddenly opened and Chen Tian suddenly appeared in front of everyone. They instinctively didn't know what was going on. What did this person want to do? As the most trusted minister of the three provincial kings, Chen Tian could definitely be called the #1 civil official. Many times, his opinions could influence Zhu Huihua. Such a busy and important person suddenly appeared in the small courtyard. Dong Chuanfu and the others were only stunned for a moment before they came to their senses and hurriedly stood up and saluted. Logically speaking, with everyone's status, especially Dong Chuanfu, who was already the vice minister of a department, people like him had the opportunity to take charge of a region and become a provincial governor at any time. His status had already far surpassed Zhu Huihua's subordinate Chen Tian, who only had a territory of 3 provinces. However, under the eaves of others, he had no choice but to lower his head. In order to survive and complete the mission, Dong Chuanfu had to learn how to humble himself. "So it's Lord Chen. Excuse me for not going out to meet you." Dong Chuanfu stood up to greet Chen Tian. Although he was happy to be able to talk to Chen Tian, on the surface, Dong Chuanfu still had an unhurried appearance. He probably knew that at this time, he was not only representing himself, but also the powerful Yang faction. Haha, Minister Dong is too polite. Hello, everyone. Chen Tian smiled and greeted everyone. His face was brimming with sincerity. If they were just a group of negotiators, based on Zhu Huihua's trust, Chen Tian really did not put them in his eyes. However, at this moment, he had no choice but to put on an act. This was closely related to the mission he had accepted. Zhu Huihua had just given him a very important mission. If he wanted to complete this mission, he needed the cooperation of Dong Chuanfu and the others in front of him. Although he did not think that this mission had a chance of success, in order to gain the most trust, he decided to take a gamble and give it a try. Being able to speak eloquently was one of Chen Tian's greatest abilities. With his intention, everyone sat together and began to talk. The topic was led in the direction of the result he wanted. At first, everyone was very happy with Chen Tian's goodwill and even his humble attitude. Some people even began to suppress their pride in their hearts. See, in other people's territory, they still had to curry favor with him. Didn't this mean that Yang Xie was now so powerful that no one could be a match for him? However, as the conversation deepened, Chen Tian changed his way of speaking his thoughts and put forward his request. Everyone was speechless, and the pride that had just risen was suppressed back into the bottom of their hearts. As the leader of the 18 people, Dong Chuanfu was even more furious. He loudly rebuked, "This is simply impossible. We will never agree to this request of yours. That's right. Deputy Director Yan Lianshui, who was second only to Dong Chuanfu among the 18 people, also spoke up. If there is anything you want to discuss, you can discuss it with us. We are here on behalf of Yang Xie. There are many things that Minister Dong can make the decision on. However, I don't know why you want to see Bugnam of Gojoseon. You also want Bugnam of Gojoseon to personally visit Yunnan Manor. Isn't it said that a gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall? Yes, we will never agree to this. For a moment, the 18 envoys actually spoke in unison. Perhaps this was because Qin Tian's request was too excessive, but how could it not be because they all knew that they could not agree to this request, nor did they have the authority to agree to it? What kind of joke was this? Inviting Yang Chendong to enter Yunnan Manor, and not allowing him to bring more than 500 soldiers? Such excessive conditions were probably something that no one in Yangxia would agree to, right? How could they agree so easily? And even if they did agree, what would it do? Although Dong Chuanfu and the other 18 people were very afraid of death, they were more worried about the safety of their families and clansmen. If because of them, Yang Chendong was in danger and something happened to him, at that time, they were afraid that they and their families would be finished together. Not only that, but their reputations might also go down in history. That was the greatest harm to scholars. Seeing that Dong Chuanfu and the other 18 people were filled with anger, Chun Tian was not angry or anxious. All of this was within his expectations. He did not expect to be able to persuade them with his glib tongue. He came here to deliver the message. Whether it would succeed or not, he did not have much hope. Everyone, don't be anxious. Since it is a negotiation, then of course it is a negotiation. To put it bluntly, we will propose conditions to each other, and everyone will discuss it. Like this, as long as Bugnam of Gojoseon is willing to show his sincerity and not bring more than 500 soldiers into Yunnan Manor, then we will recognize his magnanimity. Our 3 provincial kings will not only apologize to Bugnam of Gojoseon for the previous misunderstanding, but also be willing to give up Guangxi, Yunnan, and Gue province. Qin Tian threw out a bomb as soon as he opened his mouth. Hearing this, Dong Chuanfu and the others were stunned. Didn't this mean that as long as Yang Chendong was willing to come personally, the problem of the 3 provinces would be easily solved and this place would become one of Yangxia's forces? Wasn't this the main purpose of Dong Chuanfu and the others coming here? Taking advantage of this moment of silence, Qin Tian continued to speak. Everyone, our 3 provincial kings have now shown their sincerity. Next, it is up to Bugnam of Gojoseon. I think this matter should be reported and handed over to the higher-ups to make the final decision. I will wait here for your good news. Goodbye. Qin Tian left. However, no one paid attention to him anymore. Everyone was obviously shocked by his words. Just by showing up, Yang Chendong could make the 3 provinces under Yang Xie's control without shedding any blood. This temptation was so great that Dong Chuanfu and the others could not help but swallow their saliva. It took a while for everyone to react, but Chun Tian was already nowhere to be found. Everyone's gaze fell on Dong Chuanfu. He was the head envoy, and such a big matter had to be decided by him. Although no one said anything, Dong Chuanfu could see through their eyes what they were thinking. All right, let's report this matter back and let the king make the decision himself. Of course, let's not have any expectations. Dong Chuanfu was not the only one who thought this way. Chen Tian and his master, Zhu Huihua, were the same. They did not think that doing this would make Yang Chendong come. Because of this, after Chen Tian walked out of the diplomatic mission's courtyard, a rumor began to take root and sprout in the 3 provinces. Have you heard? The 3 provincial kings have decided to bow to Bugnam of Gojoseon for the safety of the people in our 3 provinces. They only need Bugnam of Gojoseon to personally come to Yunnan Manor and give him some guarantees, and he will be willing to hand over the military power of the 3 provinces. Oh, that's a good thing. Speaking of which, there's nothing wrong with the 3 provincial kings doing this. After all, they previously attacked Yunnan province and offended Bugnam of Gojoseon. Now, they are probably looking for an opportunity to explain themselves. Haha, this is a good thing. Doesn't this mean that the people of our 3 provinces do not need to go through the flames of war to become Yangxia people? I heard that the Han people in Yangxia have a very honorable status. Sigh, that's not necessarily true. Now that the three provincial kings have shown their attitude, it's still unknown whether Bugnam of Gojoseon will agree. Have you forgotten? Previously, someone said that the five-star army first assassinated their king in Bangra, then used cruel methods to burn and kill many cities and people. This was all because Bangra had previously contributed to Yangxia's Myanmar province. It just so happens that the three provincial kings also attacked Yunnan province. Will they use the same methods on the three provinces under our feet? These words immediately attracted the attention of others. Someone immediately said, "That's not very likely. Bugnam of Gojoseon has deep feelings for the Han people. Bangra is a foreign race. How could they use such methods on us?" Chapter 1558. That might not be the case. Who can guess what the people in power want to do? As for the fact that the three provinces are all Han, that's true. However, there are so many Han in the world. Even if we die, the other Han will still be around. In a few years, the population will continue to increase, so it doesn't matter if the three provinces have us or not. Phew. Doesn't that mean that if Bugnam of Gojoseon doesn't agree to come to Yunnan Manor and accept the allegiance of the three provincial kings, then there will be a huge war, and everyone will be in danger? You're smart, brother. That's the truth. So let's pray that Bugnam of Gojoseon will agree. If he doesn't, then it means that he wants to kill us. I will join the army and fight against the five-star army. No matter how much they have done for the rise of the Han, if they want to kill me and my family, then they are my enemies. I will hand over the 100 Jin and fight them to the death. That's right, that's what I think too. I will also mobilize my family to fight them to the end. Similar conversations continued and continued to spread. After Qin Tian received Zhu Huiying's order to deliberately spread these rumors, the news quickly swept across the three provinces like a gust of wind. More and more people came to know about it, and various theories and voices emerged one after another. However, from the beginning to the end, none of these conversations mentioned Zhu Huiying's request for Yang Chendong to not bring more than 500 men with him. The people were being deceived, but no one mentioned it. It was a trap in itself. This was also why Mo Gue gave Zhu Huiying the idea. It would be best if the matter was successful. When Yang Chendong brought 500 soldiers into Yunnan Manor, he would be a fish on the chopping board. However, once something happened to Yang Chendong, Yangxia would be in chaos. At that time, who would have the time to cause trouble for Zhu Huiying? Not only that, it would also be a good opportunity for Zhu Huihua to show off his might and quickly encroach on Yangxia's territory. If he failed, Zhu Huihua would not lose anything. On the contrary, he would have many more soldiers in his hands, and he would have more power to fight against the five-star army. Success or failure was a good thing for him. This was also why Zhu Huichun listened to Mo Gue's advice after some hesitation. Although by doing so, he would inevitably offend Yang Chendong, but even if he did not do this, how good would the result be? The rumors were still spreading. Dong Chuanfu and the others in the small courtyard were completely unaware of this. After a discussion, the 18 of them wrote a report and sent it to the telegraphist accompanying them, asking him to pass the news to Bugnam of Gojoseon. With the power of Yangxia's intelligence department, the news of what happened in Yunnan Manor had already reached Yang Chendong's ears. Then, the report written by the 18 people was sent to the desk. As the messenger, Beta Persei was naturally very familiar with the contents, so the moment he put down the telegram, he said tentatively, "Young master, this is clearly Zhu Huiying's evil intentions. Don't be fooled by him." Beta Persei's words were well-founded. He had been by Yang Chendong's side for many years and understood his master well. He was a master who was not afraid of anything and loved to take risks. If this happened to other masters, Beta Persei would not be worried at all, because no one would take such a risk. However, it was completely different when it came to Yang Chendong. He really had the courage to do something unimaginable. If it was the Yangxia of the past, with a weak foundation, small territory, and small population, it would be worth taking a risk. However, Yangxi had already grown into a towering tree. He was even stronger than the Northern Ming Empire and the Southern Ming Empire. Hence, such a risk had completely lost its meaning. Yes, I know. Yang Chendong smiled and looked at Beta Persei. knowing that this person was saying this for his own good. However, how could he not know that Zhu Huiying was taking a risk? If he went, he might stay there forever and even face the risk of being killed. If he did not go, the Han people of the three provinces would inevitably fail and become enemies with him. In this way, regardless of the outcome, the Han people would die. In this way, no matter what, it would not be worth it, and he would only be the loser in the end. This was indeed a difficult choice. If he wanted to break out of this situation and obtain the ruling power of the three provinces at the lowest price, it seemed that the only feasible way was to take the risk. However, Chen Tian's words alone were not enough. He still needed to continue to expand the matter and use Chen Tian's mouth to make the matter a reality. Yang Chendong stood there for a long time without saying a word. Slowly, a plan began to take shape in his mind. In the small courtyard, less than half a day later, they received a personal call from Yang Chendong. After reading the contents of the report, Dong Chuanfu and the other 18 people, in addition to sighing in admiration of their king's boldness, also learned about what had happened outside and the rumors that Chen Tian had spread. Chen Tian is a despicable person, Yin Lianshui said angrily. That's right, he is a despicable person. However, in the face of a gentleman like our king, he can only give in. Men, tell the soldiers guarding us that we want to see Chen Tian. We have something important to tell him. At this moment, Dong Chuanfu was full of energy. After receiving Yang Chendong's personal telegram, he had more confidence when he spoke. After the soldiers guarding the courtyard heard Dong Chuanfu's request, they did not dare to delay and immediately reported it to Chen Tian. Chen Tian was also very curious about the five-star army's decision so quickly. He led a group of soldiers back to the small courtyard and saw Dong Chuanfu and the others who had been waiting there for a long time. Duke Chen, our king has already replied. He welcomes and is gratified that the three provincial kings are willing to submit to our Yang Xie. As for the three provincial kings' request to meet my great king in the city, I have also agreed. Dong Chuanfu's voice was not soft. He looked completely different from when they met in the morning. He looked much more energetic. He actually agreed? Chen Tian, who was originally a little absent-minded, was stunned. He originally thought that Bugnam of Gojoseon would definitely point out that this was a conspiracy and reprimand them. As such, they only needed to prepare for the upcoming battle. Then, they would make good use of the newly won people's hearts. There was still a possibility of a battle. However, when Dong Chuanfu said that Yang Chendong had agreed, Chen Tian felt that his brain was not enough to process it. Could he really agree to this? Could it be that he did not know that this was a conspiracy? Could it be that he did not know that once Bugnam of Gojoseon came to Yunnan Manor, it would be equivalent to an eagle being locked in a cage and would not have the chance to spread its wings and soar? Could it be that he did not know that this was a dangerous journey? At this moment, countless thoughts appeared in Chen Tian's mind. He was increasingly unable to understand Yang Chendong's actions. It was not until Dong Chuanfu intentionally coughed that Chen Tian was pulled back to reality from his fantasy. Oh, but I wonder if there are any other conditions? Out of instinct, he asked. Yes, our king does have conditions. Dong Chuanfu nodded. As expected, Chen Tian's heart skipped a beat. He did not believe that Yang Chendong would jump in despite knowing the truth of the matter. He had even thought about what the other party's request would be. It must be to bring more soldiers. For example, the 500 followers would be replaced by 50,000. With the powerful combat strength of the five-star army, if these 50,000 were all elite troops, it would be very difficult to touch him in Yunnan Manor. Chen Tian already had a judgment in his heart. He was even prepared to reject the other party's request for 50,000 people because it would threaten the safety of the three provincial kings. He opened his mouth and said, "But I don't know what the conditions are. Why don't you tell me?" Chen Tian just wanted to see how Dong Chuanfu and the others would perform. He didn't agree to it, but he wanted to see how Dong Chuanfu and the others would perform. Looking at Chen Tian, Dong Chuanfu did not think too much. Instead, his voice was loud as he said righteously, "Previously, there were some rumors in the city that were unfavorable to our king. I think it must have come from your mouths, so our king cannot believe you." "It's coming," Chen Tian thought in his heart. However, he did not stop him. Instead, He wanted to watch Dong Chuanfu continue his performance. He only needed to wait for the other party to finish speaking before he would completely deny it. At this time, Dong Chuanfu was still talking to himself. Who knows if the three provincial kings will do anything else? In order to dispel our king's concerns, and to make the truth of the matter public, you only need to send out official documents to the people of the three provinces. Tell them that the three provincial kings intend to submit to our king. Everything will wait until our king enters Yunnan Manor. After ensuring his safety, the authority of the three provinces will be handed over. Then, Bugnam of Gojoseon will come here and take over everything. No, that's too much. Chun Tian didn't even pay attention to what Dong Chuanfu was saying and directly denied it. Then, with an angry look, he snorted coldly and said, "This is simply because Wu Nan King doesn't trust my king. If that's the case, is there still a need to negotiate?" Not only were Dong Chuanfu and the 17 members of the diplomatic mission stunned by Chan Tian's words, but even the personal guards behind Chan Tian were stunned. They did not understand how their master's words had anything to do with Dong Chuanfu's request. At this time, Chan Tian also felt that something was wrong. This could be seen from the faces of Dong Chuanfu and the others. Out of the corner of his eyes, he glanced at the bodyguards beside him. When he saw that they were also looking at him in surprise, he knew that this was bad. Obviously, Dong Chuanfu wasn't talking about how many soldiers he would bring into Southern Cloud Manor. He forced a smile and said, "I'm sorry, Minister Dong. I've been busy recently, so I was distracted by other things. I will have to trouble you to say it again." Chapter 1559. Although Dong Chuanfu was puzzled by Chin Tian's behavior, he did not think too much about it and repeated what he had just said. This time, Chin Tian could be said to have heard it very clearly. Because of this, he was very surprised. With just this request, Yang Chendong would bring 500 followers into Yunnan Manor? Was he not worried about his own safety? Puzzled, he repeated his question. Just this one request? Yes, just this one request. But these notices must be posted all over the streets and alleys of the three provinces so that all the people know about this. At that time, my king will come to Yunnan Manor and give the three provincial kings a chance to turn over a new leaf. Dong Chuanfu raised his head and said proudly, "Look, this was their king." The so-called danger was nothing in his eyes at all. Just this boldness alone was something they could never learn. Okay, no problem. Chun Tian agreed immediately. He just wanted to spread the news and let the people of the three provinces know. But what was the use of this? To threaten the people? Haha. At that time, ordinary people did not have any status. Often, when the noblemen and officials said that the country was prosperous and the people were at peace, they were referring to the scholars and the noble families because they were often with the noblemen. In the eyes of the noblemen, if these people were satisfied, then the people of the world would be satisfied. Because of this, Chun Tian really did not know the use of Yang Chendong's request. So what if the people of the three provinces were at his beck and call? Could these people turn the world upside down? The result of this meeting was a happy ending. After Chun Tian left, he went to see Zhu Huiyun and told him about Dong Chuanfu and the others, or rather Yang Chendong's request. The three provincial kings were very happy to hear it. Ha ha ha, great news, great news. As long as Yang Chendong enters Yunnan Manor, he will be the prey in our eyes. He will not be able to turn the world upside down. At that time, we will be able to use the emperor to order his vassals. No matter how big the territory and how much wealth, it will be ours. Chunggong, let's go and settle this matter immediately. In order to prevent any undue delay, this matter has to be done quickly. Also, send someone to keep an eye on Yunnan Manor to prevent this Bugnam of Gojoseon from secretly sending people into the city. Yang Chendong's strength, although Zhu Huitu didn't experience it too much, but looking at the opponents he dealt with, he knew that this person was very powerful. In order to prevent the other party from playing any tricks in the dark, he had to strengthen his control over Southern Cloud Manor, especially in terms of military force. As for public opinion, Zhu Huichen really didn't care. As long as he had money, food, and soldiers, ordinary people would have to look up to him. After getting a positive answer, Chun Tian went to work with a face full of joy. Once Zhu Huichen really became a great emperor, he would have the power to meddle with Yang Xie. His status would inevitably rise, and some of his ambitions would be realized. It was very likely that he would be remembered in history. No one cared about public opinion, but only Yang Chendong was very clear about the importance of public opinion. Yang Chendong had some headaches about Yunnan, Guizhou, and Guangxi. These were the ancestral lands of the Han people. It was impossible to deal with them like dealing with other forces. After taking over these places, he couldn't forcibly move them out. That would be criticized behind his back. Yang Chendong didn't care about what they said about the foreign races, but for the Han people, their position was naturally different. If possible, of course, he would want to solve the problem here in a peaceful way. Thus, Zhu Huichen came up with this move. Although it seemed that this place was abnormally dangerous, but wasn't it an opportunity for him? If he did it well, he could righteously take over the 3 provinces, and the people here wouldn't have any resistance. In this way, the big problem would be solved. Since that was the case, why would he not agree? As for what kind of danger would there be in Yunnan Manor, Yang Chendong, who had Datsong, really didn't care too much. If they wanted to deal with him, those people had to have the ability to do so. Of course, because of Datsong, Yang Chendong was full of confidence, but others didn't know. After learning the details of Yang Chendong's telegram to Dong Xuanfu, Yang Xie was in an uproar. First, it was the 2 commanders of the 2nd and 4th Divisions of the Longfeng Army, followed by the 1st Cavalry Army's commander Tian Hu and the new army's commander Su He. Then, a group of officials in the first city and the people in charge of the provinces and regions also sent telegrams to inquire about this matter. At the same time, they also advised their king not to be impulsive. In this regard, Yang Chendong just smiled and accepted the concern of these people. Then, he did something that made everyone exclaim. A personally written telegram was sent to Qiqian City, establishing his eldest son, Yang Bo, as the prince and establishing his identity as the legitimate heir. On the issue of establishing the successor, there were already many people who had spoken up. After all, Yang Chendong was different from other monarchs. He was a master who always liked to rush to the front line, and danger could be discovered at any time. It was true that Yang Bo was the eldest son, and he was also the son of Queen Hu Yin. No matter how one looked at it, he was the best choice to be the successor. However, without any instructions, anything could happen. As the saying goes, if the name is not correct, the words will not go smoothly. How could the other princes not have a chance to compete? Besides, Yang Xie was really too powerful. With such a huge monster, when Yang Chendong was around, the people in charge would be loyal and wouldn't have any other thoughts. But what if something happened? In the face of such a huge temptation, coupled with the fact that Crimson City was quite far away from many provinces, in a place where the heavens were high and the emperor was far away, it was inevitable that the ambitions in the depths of some people's hearts would be exposed. If that was the case, it was not impossible for the Yang faction to be torn apart. However, if the successor was confirmed, then it would be completely different. At that time, when Yang Chendong wasn't around, everyone would consciously follow the new young master. Regardless of whether they agreed in their hearts, they would have to do so on the surface. If some of them had other ideas and made other moves, Yang Bo would be able to give the order to send out troops to suppress them. Just like before, it would be justifiable. This was the importance of having a legitimate successor. It was because Yang Chendong was still very young, only in his 30s, and his health had always been very good. In addition, he had the protection of the world's most elite forces, the Black Cavalry. That's right, after some people's requests for a successor were not answered, they weren't particularly anxious. And now, Yang Chendong had taken the initiative to write down the document for Yang Bo's succession, and it did indeed let some people put down the worries in their hearts. However, when they thought about Yang Chendong's actions, they couldn't help but worry for the old master. Whether it was Yang Xie or the 5-star army, it was all because of Yang Chendong that they had everything they had now. If something were to happen to this founder, the huge Yang Xie was likely to be torn apart in an instant, just like the death of Genghis Khan in Mongolia. Even if Yang Bo could achieve temporary stability, if he wanted to continue expanding his territory, it would be impossible. For some of the officials who still wanted to see how far the Han people could go, of course, this was not what they wanted. Thus, Even though the succession document was sent out everywhere, there were still many officials who sent telegrams to Yang Chendong, asking him not to take the risk and enter Yunnan Manor. Among them, City Lord Yu Qian was the leader. Yu Qian's feelings for the great Ming dynasty were unquestionable, but not many people knew that his loyalty wasn't to any dynasty, but to the Han people. Since Yang Chendong did better than the great Ming dynasty in this aspect, why wouldn't he fully support him? This could be seen from the fact that he called Yang Chendong king and had his son become an official. He also did his best to assist him. Yu Qian thought that even if he couldn't see the day when the Han people unified the world, his son and grandson had to see it and participate in it. But now, just as the hope was getting bigger and bigger, Yang Chendong wanted to take the initiative to take the risk, so how could he let it go? If Yang Chendong hadn't sent a telegram to Yang Wu and Deputy City Lord Luan Shaochen in Crimson City to keep an eye on Yu Qian, he probably would have already boarded a ship and rushed over. Even so, Yu Qian still sent 3 telegrams a day to express his determination and also warned Yang Chendong not to take the risk. The public opinion could be fought for in the future, but he couldn't take the risk and regret it for the rest of his life. Imperial Palace of Crimson City. Yang Bo, who was already 10 years old, had already grown into a handsome young man. Ever since his father left Crimson City 6 years ago, he had not returned. In other words, Yang Bo, who was already 10 years old, had not seen his father for more than 6 years. However, this did not affect the glorious image of Yang Chendong in his heart. Putting aside everything else, in the past 6 years, Yang Chendong had restored the far eastern province and taken down Eastern Europe and Central Asia. He had destroyed countless countries and increased the wealth, territory, and population of the Yangtze. It wouldn't be long before news of a great victory came from the front. When the little Yang Bo heard this, he felt a sense of pride and glory. From how he saw it, this was why his father was so amazing, and he felt proud to have such a father. With his father as his role model, Yang Bo did not live a pampered life because of his status as the crown prince. On the contrary, he worked even harder than the children of other families. He studied and learned how to wield his saber, and he had done some research on firearms. As the Empress Mother, Hu Yin naturally gave her full support. Whatever Yang Bo wanted to learn, the top talents in the entire Crimson City could be his teachers, allowing him to ask any questions he wanted. With great support, Yang Bo was more opinionated than his peers, and he was also more mature. He had always thought that he had to work hard so that when his father returned to Crimson City, he would be praised by his father. He wanted to enjoy the fatherly love and praise that only children could enjoy. Chapter 1560. But now, a document had spread to every province in Yangtze. He had become a prince and the first in line to inherit the throne. After knowing what this meant from his teacher, Yang Chendong was not only unhappy, but he personally wrote a telegram and sent it to Yang Chendong. The meaning was not complicated. As a son, he missed his father. He wanted to see his father and enjoy the joy that Yang Chendong brought him when he touched his little head. As a son, he didn't want his father to take risks, because his father was his everything. As the son of a king, and a possible king in the future, he understood his father's approach. He wished his father a triumphant return and would wait for his safe return. But if things did not work out, he would take the initiative to start everything and fulfill Yang Chendong's wish to let the Han people stand at the top of the world. This telegram was respectfully sent to Yang Chendong by Beta Persei. After reading the contents of the telegram, Yang Chendong had mixed feelings. He sighed in his heart. His son had finally grown up. She couldn't help but murmur in her heart, "Bo-er, don't worry. Your father won't be in trouble so easily. I will lead you to a higher peak. I will watch you get married and have children. I will watch the day you rule this world." Order, prepare to set off for Yunnan Manor. At this moment, Yang Chendong's face was full of high spirits. He wanted to set an example for his son. He wanted to make everything impossible possible. According to the news, the kings of the 3 provinces had already posted notices, stating that as long as King Wunan, Yang Chendong, was willing to condescend to the southern Cloud Manor, the king of the 3 provinces, Zhu Huixian, would be moved by his sincerity. The 3 provinces might surrender without a fight and become part of Yang Chendong's territory. When the notice was posted, the local people were overjoyed. They had long heard about the treatment of the Han people in Yangtze's territory. Not only did everyone have a grain field, but they were also given houses to live in. Those with skills could also work in factories to earn money. It was said that many people who went there first not only did not have enough food at home, but also had meat on the table during the new year. All of this was undoubtedly a fairy-like life for the ordinary people. If it was not because they were too far away, or because the village officials and officials at all levels were too strict, they would have fled and sought refuge. Now, they could become a member of Yangtze without moving and enjoy all kinds of good policies. All of the people were naturally overjoyed and looked forward to Bugnam of Gojoseon's appearance in Yunnan Manor. Of course, most of the people did not think that Yang Chendong would be a threat once he entered the territory of the three provinces. From their point of view, Bugnam of Gojoseon, who could destroy the Mongolians and the surrounding foreign tribes, moved into Yunnan Manor. It was the same as returning to his own home. How could there be any danger? On the contrary, if Bugnam of Gojoseon did not come, it would mean that he did not want them and their lives would be in danger. In order to survive, they had to work hard to become the three provinces' army and fight against the five-star army on the battlefield. It had to be said that Zhu Huiyu had the upper hand in public opinion this time. He was now using public opinion to threaten Yang Chendong and force him to take the risk to come to Yunnan Manor. Yang Chendong, who knew everything, could not think of a way to solve the problem, so he decided to take the risk this time. Naturally, this risk was very dangerous in the eyes of others, but in Yang Chendong's eyes, it was not a big deal. If he was forced into a corner, he could use the big warehouse. But before he was at the end of his rope, it was better not to expose his bottom line. He would not forget that from all kinds of clues, there was a pair of eyes staring at him in the dark. And before he found the traitor, it was best not to use his trump card. This was equivalent to an additional insurance. If he did not want to use the big warehouse, the 500 people who came this time must be carefully selected. Of course, Yang Er volunteered himself and insisted on following him. Next was the 2,000 Black Cavalry, the Long Brothers, and the self-proclaimed elite warriors of the world's first cavalry army. However, there were only 500 people to follow. Even if the Black Cavalry had 2,000 people, how could there be anyone else's turn? Out of 2,000 people, only 500 could be brought. With a ratio of 4-1, all the Black Cavalry wanted to join. In their hearts, it was all thanks to Yang Chendong that they could have a good life and social status now. Now that their master needed them, of course, they would not shirk their responsibility. Yang Chendong handed this difficult matter to Beta Persei to handle. He believed that this young family servant would do his best to protect his safety. If that was the case, who would he bring along? He must be more nervous than himself. Beta Persei also lived up to Yang Chendong's expectations. After getting the power to choose the soldiers, he called for 2,000 Black Cavalry and held an internal martial arts competition in a small area. The first 500 people could follow. As for the others, if they did not seize the opportunity, then sorry, they could only stay here quietly. In the afternoon, 500 of the most elite Black Cavalry were selected. Beta Persei immediately transferred a batch of firearms to them. Then, under the worried eyes of the 5-star army generals, they went straight from Beijiang Prefecture to Yunnan Prefecture under the banner of Bugnam of Gojoseon. After Yang Chendong arrived at Beijiang Prefecture, Wang Zhanjiang, one of the 3 provincial generals outside the city, retreated with his army. He came on this trip full of confidence. The army of 150,000 looked like they were bound to invade the entire Vietnamese province. In Wang Zhanjiang's mind, he suddenly appeared in Vietnamese province and had the advantage of military strength. Even if he could not conquer the entire Vietnamese province, he could at least occupy half of it. However, he did not expect that Beijiang Prefecture alone would be able to stop him here. With the cooperation of the 1st Division of the Cold Front Division, he did not gain the slightest advantage no matter how hard he tried. He also did not see any hope of attacking the city. Therefore, when Yang Chendong appeared with the main army, he turned around and fled. Wang Zhanjiang's luck was very bad. When he led his troops back to Langsun, he was heavily injured by Cheng Hu of the 1st Division of the Cold Front Division, causing him to flee like a stray dog. On the way back, in order to make himself look less miserable, He even ordered his Kiliarchs to capture many able-bodied men from nearby villages to supplement the army. However, what he did not know was that among the able-bodied men he captured, 2,000 of them were from the 1st Division of the Cold Front Division. One by one, they disguised themselves as ordinary people and were scattered all over the place. Then, they were caught and found by the 3 provinces' army and brought back to the Southern Cloud Mansion in a grand manner. Although these 2,000 men were scattered among the various armies, they were already prepared. As long as Cheng Hu, as the commander, gave the order, they would immediately gather and do more things. The existence of these people was also one of the trump cards that Yang Qindong dared to enter Yunnan Prefecture. Since both sides had reached a temporary truce agreement, Yang Qindong had already set off for Yunnan Prefecture with 500 black cavalry. Naturally, they did not encounter any obstacles along the way. Moreover, the armies and officials of the 3 provincial kings would come out to greet them as a sign of friendship. This allowed Yang Qindong and his troops to get closer and closer to Yunnan Prefecture. In Yunnan Prefecture, at this moment, Zhu Huichuan's face was flushed, and he was extremely excited. Previously, when he heard Imo Gui's suggestion, he did not think it was feasible. At least, if he was Yang Qindong, he would never take the risk to come to Yunnan Prefecture. Since he had a good chance of winning, why would he take the risk? However, Yang Qindong actually agreed and even appointed his eldest son, Yang Bo, as the prince. This meant that he was ready to break the hatchet and sink the boat. When Zhu Huiqiu thought about how long it would take for Yang Qindong to appear in front of him and even be controlled by him, then he might indirectly control the entire Yang family. His heart began to beat faster and faster, and it didn't slow down. In his excitement, he secretly mobilized the elite forces in his hands to get closer to Yunnan Prefecture. What he needed to do was to wait for Yang Qindong to enter the city and find the right opportunity to control him for his own use. In order to successfully complete this mission, he continuously mobilized the elite forces under him from the provinces and gathered outside Yunnan Prefecture. At the same time, he also sent out a large number of scouts to pay attention to the main forces of the 5-star army in the south of Langsun. Once he found out that they were acting strangely, he would use Yang Qindong as an excuse to immediately send troops to attack and take the initiative first. However, from the information he received so far, the main forces of the 5-star army were very obedient. They seemed to believe that Yang Qindong could succeed in the peace talks and did not have the slightest intention of moving to the 3 provinces. This made Zhu Huichun feel relieved, but at the same time, he cursed the stupidity of the 5-star army in his heart. 10 days later, when he learned that Yang Qindong and his 500 men were less than 3 days away from Yunnan Prefecture, Zhu Huichun called a group of his confidants to a secret room to discuss and perfect the military plan. Other than his number 1 think tank, Qin Tian, there were 4 of his generals present. They were General Ming, General Wu Yingtu, General Zhang Jiang, and General Kai Wanju. Over the years, Zhu Huichun had been constantly developing and expanding his strength and had gathered a group of capable people. For example, these 4 generals were one of them. There was also General Luo Guan who guarded Yunnan, General Jiang Wuqing who guarded Guangxi, and General Bai Kuren who guarded Guangxi. In the secret room, the 6 of them met and Zhu Huichun took the lead to announce the final plan, which was how to capture Yang Qindong alive and not kill him. Of course, if Yang Qindong died, Yang Xie would fall into chaos. However, for the sake of benefits, Zhu Huichun did not want to see a chaotic Yang Xie. What he wanted was to use them for his own purposes. Even if he could not take over all of Yang Xie's territory, if he could take over a third of it, it would be a land that was much larger than the Great Ming Dynasty. Chapter 1561. Unless absolutely necessary, don't kill him. In the secret chamber, Zhu Huihua made the final decision. The other 5 people nodded one after another. After each of them described the situation on their side, Chen Yuan finally said, "Your Majesty, there are 2 more things to report to you." Speak. Seeing that Chen Tian was so formal, Zhu Huihua's attitude was also extremely serious. "Your Majesty, our people have noticed that the Sheeping King's Mu family has been very active recently. I'm afraid that they will become one of the uncertain factors." Chen Tian reported the discovery of the Mu family as a big matter. The other party had been operating in Yunnan for many years. Their influence and influence were spread far and wide. It was not something that could be wiped out in a few years. If they jumped out to cause trouble at the crucial time, it would cause problems. Zhu Huihua frowned first, then quickly relaxed and said, "It's fine. They will not cooperate with Yang Qindong. They would rather this person die here. We just need to keep an eye on them." This was not wrong at all. Yang Qindong was Zhu Huihua's enemy, so how could he not be the enemy of the southern Ming Empire? The Mu family had been indebted to the great Ming Empire for generations. If there was a chance to eliminate Yang Qindong, the biggest threat to the great Ming Empire, they would not let it go easily. Therefore, most of the people from the Mu family came to kill Yang Qindong, and it was impossible for them to save people. Since Zhu Huihua said that he knew about this matter, Chun Tian did not say anything more. Both sides made the final arrangements regarding Yang Qindong's arrival. If they could not capture Yang Qindong alive, then they could only kill him. No matter what, this time, they would not allow Yang Qindong to leave Yunnan Manor alive. The news that Yang Qindong was coming to Yunnan Manor to negotiate with Zhu Huihua and peacefully take over Yun, Guang, and Gue provinces had long been spread among the people. In order to witness this great moment, all the Han people in Yunnan Manor were looking forward to it. Even the people in the surrounding towns were waiting for good news. To them, there was no better news than being able to survive a calamity without going through a war. After all, the people who would suffer the most in the chaos of war would be the people. 3 days later, outside the southern city gate of Yunnan Manor, Shan Tianzhang led a group of people to welcome the arrival of Yang Qindong's team. Zhu Huichen did not appear. Instead, he used the excuse that he was not feeling well to hide. This was what he had to be careful about. Mo Gue also reminded him that Yang Qindong was a very powerful person. He didn't act according to common sense. Don't get kidnapped as soon as you see him. If that happened, you would suffer a double loss. Regarding this, Zhu Huilu deeply agreed. In order to prevent Yang Qindong from having the opportunity to deal with or capture him alive, before the situation was under control, he would not meet with Yang Qindong. This time, he only sent Chen Tian as his representative. Yang Qindong's team came from afar. They were all dressed in black armor and black horses. Every one of the black cavalry had a saber at their waist and a firearm on their back. When the 500 people lined up neatly, they gave off the feeling of a magnificent army. He had long heard of the legends of the black cavalry's ability to fight, but he had never seen it before. He thought that the world had exaggerated their abilities. But when they faced each other, Chun Tian felt a strong, murderous aura rushing towards him. At this moment, his expression changed greatly. He couldn't help but think to himself, it's only 500 black cavalry, but they already give off the feeling of a magnificent army. It's invincible. If there were 2,000 black cavalry, even if he sent out 20 or 30,000 people, he wouldn't be able to cause any damage to the enemy in a short time. Thank goodness, thank goodness. We only agreed on 500 people. It seems like Yang Qindong is also abiding by the rules. Chun Tian said in his heart, thank goodness, thank goodness. With a smile on his face, he quickly led his men to welcome them. Yang Qindong was no stranger to Chen Tian. They had interacted many times before. Thus, he recognized him from afar. But when he didn't see Zhu Huilio's figure, Yang Qindong deliberately pretended to be unhappy and asked, what's wrong? The 3 provincial kings didn't come? Although all of this was within his expectations, Zhu Huilu wouldn't easily show himself and wouldn't give him a chance to capture the king first. However, he still had to show his anger. Seeing Yang Qindong's sullen face, Chen Tian didn't know why, but his heart couldn't help but beat faster. He hurriedly bowed and said, I'm really sorry. My king has been having a stomachache since last night. He hasn't recovered yet, so I can only come to welcome him. But please don't worry, Bugnam of Gojoseon. Once my king recovers, he will immediately come to see you. With an apologetic look, when Yang Qindong looked at him, Chen Tian couldn't help but avoid his eyes. After all, he was lying, so he was somewhat lacking in confidence. How could Yang Qindong not know that Chen Tian wasn't telling the truth? However, if he turned around and left because of this, it would be making a mountain out of a molehill. Moreover, he originally planned to enter Yunnan Manor. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to carry out his plans one by one. All right, then please send my regards to the health of the 3 provincial kings. This king hopes to see him as soon as possible so that we can discuss the matters of the 3 provinces as soon as possible. Yes, yes, Bugnam of Gojosian's intentions. This official will definitely pass on your message to my king. Then, can we enter the city now? There are many people in the city waiting to see Bugnam of Gojosian. Seeing that the matter was over, Chun Tian hurriedly changed the topic. Oh? Hearing that the people were lining the streets to welcome him, Yang Chindong's face lit up with joy. That's right. This king is really happy that the people are so fond of him. I'll have to trouble Lord Chun to lead the way. You're too kind. This is what I should do. Bugnam of Gojosian, please. Chun Tian chuckled. After bowing and making an inviting gesture, he immediately turned around and walked in front. When he turned around, he intentionally looked at the armored general who was following beside him. This person was Wang Zhanjiang. On the surface, he was in charge of the safety of Yang Qindong's group. However, in reality, he was observing if there was a suitable opportunity to make a move. When Chen Tian was welcoming Yang Qindong, he was observing from the side. However, the result disappointed him. From the performance of the 500 Black Cavalry, Yang Qindong was tightly protected in the middle. If he had to make a move forcefully, not only would he not be able to gain any advantage, he might even let the other party escape in the chaos. This would greatly disappoint the king's expectations. Without even a 20% chance of success, Wang Zhanjiang naturally wouldn't make a move so easily. He decided to wait for Yang Qindong to enter the city before making a move. No matter what, it was easier to enter the city than to leave. At that time, the initiative would be in his hands. He inconspicuously shook his head, telling Chen Tian that the opportunity wasn't ripe yet. Chen Tian nodded his head discreetly, indicating that he understood. Then, he strode into the southern Cloud Manor. The 2 sides of the streets in the city were already filled with Han commoners who came to watch the show. In the past, they had only heard of how powerful Bugnam of Gojosian was. There were even rumors that he had 3 heads and 6 arms. However, no one had actually seen what he looked like. Now that there was a chance to see his true appearance, who would be willing to let go of such an opportunity? Regarding the commoners in the city who were surrounding the 2 sides of the street, Zhu Huiyun and his subordinates discussed and didn't disperse them. After all, the commoners were the most insignificant existence to them. They didn't care about the so-called true public opinion. If they wanted to watch, then they could come and watch. This way, Yang Qindong would lower his guard. After all, with so many commoners watching, the other party would definitely think that they were sincere in negotiating. This would be beneficial to them. However, Zhu Huiyun didn't even think about it. He didn't even dare to go out of the city to welcome them. This already proved that he lacked confidence. How could Yang Qindong easily believe him? However, he was happy to see the commoners of the 3 provinces because he had already prepared gifts for these commoners. Yang Qindong entered the city. In front of him was Chen Tian and his men. They were responsible for opening the way and ensuring the safety along the way. Every 2 steps, there was a soldier from the 3 provinces guarding the place. They looked as if they were facing a great enemy. However, they weren't targeting the 5-star army, but the people from Sheeping King's Mu family. They were afraid that their appearance would disrupt their king's plan. Yang Qindong entering the city was equivalent to entering Zhu Huiyun's pot. How he wanted to see it all depended on his mood. However, if Yang Qindong died here at this time, it wouldn't meet the conditions for him to maximize his benefits. Therefore, they could only guard against the Mu family's army. It was reasonable for the soldiers on the street to be so nervous. Although Chen Tian was walking in front, his attention was always on the people behind him. When he saw Yang Qindong entering the city under the protection of 500 Black Cavalry, he breathed a long sigh of relief. He was worried that the other party would leave without even entering the city gate. In that case, all the plans would be child's play. But now, the other party had entered the city, and everything that followed was no longer up to the other party. The Black Cavalry entered the city. Yang Qindong, who was riding on the only white horse, the White Dragon, was greeted by the curious gazes of the commoners. At that moment, he also put a smile on his face, showing a refreshing appearance. But his lips moved slightly, Beta Persei, you can move now. Come on, it's time to distribute the flyers. In the future, everyone will be a family. After joining the Yangtze, all Han people must first apply for an identity certificate. Then, with the identity certificate, each person can receive 20 mu of fertile land. Not only that, with the proof of Han nationality, whether it's farming, business, or other things, you can be exempted from 30% of the tax. If you are willing to go to other provinces under the Yangtze, you can get more fertile land, ranging from 50 mu to 100 mu. Chapter 1562. Come, everyone, take a look. With your identity as a Han citizen, you can buy rice, grain, and oil at a 20% discount in Yangtze's territory in the future. Shouts and cries rang out one after another. The black cavalry, who were already prepared, took out the printed flyers and handed them to the commoners on the streets. In an instant, many of the commoners had such leaflets in their hands. Although some of them were illiterate, they could understand the language. When they heard the descriptions from the Black Knight Dragon Guards, their eyes were already dazzled. They looked at the leaflet in their hands and carefully put it away. They decided to go back and find someone who could read to listen to what was written on it. The Black Cavalry Dragon Guard's actions were truly beyond Qin Tian and the others' expectations. Wang Zhanjiang's eyes widened as he leaned closer to Qin Tian and whispered, "Lord Qin, do you need us to go and stop these people?" How could Qin Tian not know that Yang Qindong was trying to win the hearts of the people? However, a little impatience would spoil a great plan. There were so many people on the streets. If they were to make a move, the consequences would be unpredictable. If Yang Qindong were to escape in the chaos, then the loss would outweigh the gain. Qin Tian, who did not dare to take the risk, could only grit his teeth and say, "Let them distribute. As long as something happens to Bugnam of Gojoseon, these flyers will naturally be useless. It's fine." Just like that, without anyone stopping them, the 500 black cavalry's bulging chests quickly deflated. The 100,000 flyers were all distributed. Yang Qindong smiled with satisfaction. He believed that after these policies were made known to the people, there would be a huge change in the hearts of the people in the three provinces. This would be very helpful in promoting the subsequent takeover of this place. It could be said that the first thing he did after entering the city was successfully completed. Finally, after passing through the long street, under the guidance of Qin Tian and the others, they finally arrived at a relatively independent courtyard with 4 entrances. Apart from a courtyard, there were no other buildings in the area. It was very quiet. Along the way, no one came out to cause trouble. The Mu family members who originally wanted to jump out also restrained their impulse to make a move. Perhaps they also knew that under the protection of a large number of soldiers from the 3 provinces, Yang Qindong also had the extremely elite 500 black cavalry by his side to protect him. In addition, there were so many people on this street. Forcefully making a move would not gain the slightest advantage. Bugnam of Gojoseon, this is the resting place that my king has prepared for you. Since there are too many of you, the 3-section courtyard nearby will also be given to you. Are you satisfied with that? Qin Tian asked with a smile. From his expression, there was not a trace of hostility. Not bad. I'm satisfied. Yang Qindong smiled and nodded. Beta Persei, who was standing at the side, shouted, "Dao Xiao, Ba Dao Jiang, lead the team in to investigate." Immediately, the 200 black cavalry dismounted and entered. After about a quarter of an hour, the 2 captains walked out and nodded at Beta Persei. Qin Tian was not surprised to see the black cavalry being so careful. He would not hide anyone in this courtyard. He did not think that such a lowly method would be able to take down Yang Qindong. Of course, it was not that he did not do anything. He also believed that Yang Qindong would be able to see through it, but there was nothing he could do. Bugnam of Gojoseon, you must be tired after such a long journey. Why don't you take a rest first? After that, someone will send food and drinks. Everything will wait for my king to recover before starting the peace talks immediately. Is that okay? Seeing that the matter was settled, Qin Tian cupped his hands and prepared to leave. Thank you for your trouble, Master Qin. I won't see you out. Yang Qindong still had a smile on his face. I wouldn't dare. Goodbye. After Qin Tian said this, he turned to General Wang Zhanjiang and said, leave 1,000 soldiers outside the courtyard. They must ensure the safety of Bugnam of Gojoseon. Without orders, no one is allowed to approach this place. Otherwise, they will be killed without mercy. Please rest assured, Master Chun. Wang Zhanjiang replied happily. When Yang Chendong heard this, the smile on his face grew wider. This was clearly an act for him. On the surface, it was to protect them, but in reality, it was just to monitor them. After saying this, Chuntian turned to look at Yang Chendong and said with a smile, "This humble official will take his leave." Well said, well said. By the way, I will have to trouble you to send Dong Chuanfu and the others out of the city. Since I am here, there is no need for him to stay here. Yang Chendong made a timely request. Compared to Yang Chendong's importance, Dong Chuanfu was not even worth a fart. Chen Tian did not want to go against Yang Chendong over such a small matter, so he immediately nodded and agreed. After Chen Tian left, Yang Chendong also entered the courtyard. Then, he saw Beta Persei saying with an indignant expression, "Young master, this humble one just took a look. There are 2 courtyards and a total of 6 doors. 2 of them are front doors, 2 back doors, and 2 side doors. This is really not easy to defend. Why didn't the other party find us a large courtyard with 5 courtyards? Why did they have to put together 2 courtyards? This is clearly to create a loophole in our defense." Looking at Beta Persei's angry expression, Yang Chendong waved his hand and said, "Just take care of the main courtyard. As for the rest, we will wait and see." How could Yang Chendong not see through the other party's tricks? If Yang Chendong was 99% sure that Zhu Huitong had ulterior motives towards him before, he was 100% sure now. Since that was the case, there was no point in saying more. Everything depended on their own means. It seems that the other party doesn't want me dead, but wants me alive. Interesting, his appetite is really big. Yang Chendong muttered to himself as Beta Persei left to make arrangements. He was very curious about how the other party would target him. He also wanted to see how long the other party could endure. After Chen Tian left the courtyard, he arranged for someone to let Dong Chuanfu and the others leave. Then, he strode towards the king's mansion of the 3 provinces. Zhu Huitong could no longer calm down and was pacing back and forth in the hall. When he saw Chen Tian, he asked nervously, "How is it?" "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Bugnam of Gojoseon has fallen into the trap. He has now been arranged to stay in the courtyard. General Wang Zhanjiang is waiting there with his men." As he spoke, Chen Tian began to talk about the situation along the way in detail from the moment he saw Yang Chendong. Zhu Huitong didn't care about the leaflets in the city promoting the Yang Xie policy at all. Yang Chendong couldn't even protect himself, so how could the policy be implemented? It was just a pie in the sky. There was nothing to be afraid of. What he cared about was that Yang Chendong had entered the city and lived in a courtyard with 6 doors. This would also determine whether the initiative was completely in his hands. Good, very good. After hearing that Yang Chendong had entered the courtyard, Zhu Huitong was so excited that his face flushed red. Then, he paced back and forth in the hall and said, "Chen Gonggong, if we take action tonight, what are the chances of success?" "This? If we capture a dead Yang Chendong, there wouldn't be any problem. After all, there are only 500 of them. However, if we want to capture him alive, it will be difficult." Chen Tian didn't answer immediately. Instead, he thought for a while before saying this. "No, this is such a good opportunity. Of course, we have to capture Yang Chendong alive." Zhu Huitong shook his head. With such a good opportunity, if they only let Yang Chendong die, they wouldn't be able to maximize the benefits. This was obviously not what he wanted. "Chen Gonggong, do you think we can think of something with the food? For example, poison?" "We can't. If we can think of this method, the other party will definitely think of it as well. They must have prepared many methods to check the food we send. Once they find out, they will definitely fight to the death. Unless it's absolutely necessary, it's best not to do this." Chen Tian hurriedly shook his head. The Black Knight Dragon Guards were elites. How could something as simple as poisoning really make things difficult for the other party? Yes. This king didn't think it through. Zhu Huitong knew that he was too agitated and didn't think carefully enough. Then, according to Chen Gonggong, what should we do? Chen Tian was already prepared for this. When faced with this question, He almost immediately answered, "Your Majesty, Yang Chendong has just arrived, so he will definitely be on high alert. It's not appropriate to attack blindly. However, we can give it a try. For example," Chen Tian muttered into Zhu Huidong's ear. Zhu Huitong nodded continuously as he listened, his face glowing with excitement. In the courtyard, Yang Chendong sat in the main hall, reading a biography in his hand. This was the only copy that one of his subordinates found. It recorded some of the experiences and descriptions of the mountains and rivers written by a person named Wang Pu after his travels. There were many records about the three provinces. In the future, this place would become one of his territories. Of course, Yang Chendong had to know more about it. When Beta Persei finished arranging everything and entered the main hall, he secretly admired Yang Chendong in his heart when he saw him sitting there quietly reading a book. At this time, his young master was still calm. It was no wonder that he could conquer such a huge country. Seeing that Yang Chendong was reading, Beta Persei turned to leave. However, Yang Chendong spoke at this time. "Beta Persei, empty the row of rooms in the backyard. Someone will send something later. Just leave it there." "Something? What is it?" Beta Persei asked in confusion. He didn't receive any notice. This was Yunnan Manor, not Yang Xie's territory. How could someone send something here? Yang Chendong suddenly raised his head and looked at Beta Persei. That gaze made Beta Persei's heart tighten. He suddenly thought that it must be an extremely confidential matter. His question just now was obviously superfluous. He immediately said, "Yes, young master. I'll arrange for someone to empty that place." Chapter 1563. After he finished speaking, Beta Persei turned around and left after seeing that Yang Chendong had no intention of saying anything else. Leaving Yang Chendong alone in the main hall, he let out a sigh of relief. Of course, he would not let anyone else know about the secret of Datsong, not even Beta Persei. Yang Chendong was very clear about the principle that if the emperor did not keep the secret, he would lose his minister, and if the minister did not keep the secret, he would lose his chastity. Ever since the king of Bangla was assassinated, he always had a feeling that an invisible net was covering his head, and he always felt that someone was watching him in the dark. Although he had wanted to trace the origin of this feeling, unfortunately, there was nothing, because this was just a feeling he had. However, Yang Chendong believed this feeling without any evidence, and before he found the traitor, he would not easily trust anyone. Of course, he believed in people like Beta Persei who followed him all the time, but he could not guarantee that the people around Beta Persei were reliable. In order to reduce the complications, it was better not to tell anyone. As for the row of houses in the backyard, Yang Chendong naturally wanted to put weapons there. This time, although the 500 black cavalry also brought firearms with them, they were very limited. This was especially true for ammunition, which was extremely lacking. And if they had enough ammunition, the 500 black cavalry would be enough to guard the small courtyard and prevent any enemy from advancing. It was dark. The three provincial armies sent food for the 500 black cavalry. Beta Persei brought Dao Xiao and Ba Dao Jiang to check carefully and did not find any problems. But for the sake of safety, they only sent a squad of 10 black cavalry to try first. After seeing that there were no adverse reactions after an hour of eating, everyone began to eat. Yang Chendong agreed with everyone's caution. Although he did not think that the three provincial armies would do anything because it would only prove the other party's stupidity, it was better to be safe than sorry. After the meal, the small courtyard became quiet. A total of 500 black cavalry, a total of 200 people were arranged to be on night watch. They were hidden in every corner of the two courtyards, showing the caution of the black cavalry. The black cavalry was not only strong in individual combat, but also had a good sense of obedience and loyalty. What was more, they were cautious. When they should be bold, they would charge forward. When they should be careful, they would be extremely cautious like an embroidered woman. It was late at night. The figure of the night watchman walked past the street outside the door and sounded the third night watch. Not long after the night watchman walked past the street, hundreds of black shadows suddenly appeared from everywhere and began to gather outside the street. These black-clothed people were extremely familiar with the terrain of this street. They avoided the sentries of the 3 provincial armies, one after another, and arrived outside the small courtyard. Then, they gathered into a flood. From afar, there were about 150 people. Their footsteps were light, their movements nimble, their landing silent, and there was no wind when they moved. They were undoubtedly experts. As soon as they appeared outside the small courtyard, their footsteps did not stop for too long. Instead, they jumped over the wall and stood guard. They appeared to be in good order. Soon, the back door of the 3 courtyard was opened from the inside. A group of black-clothed people entered in a single file and quickly charged towards the 4 courtyard on the other side. Attack! Just as these black shadows did not encounter any obstacles along the way and arrived at the side door of the 4 courtyard, a loud roar suddenly sounded. Then, there was the sound of flames spewing out. Bullets flew out and covered the bodies of those black-clothed people. The black-clothed people were completely unprepared for this sudden attack. Just this attack alone caused at least 100 corpses to fall. Less than a third of the black-clothed people retreated in panic. However, since they were already here, how could they possibly let them retreat? Unknowingly, a row of black knights and dragon guards had appeared behind them. They had 2 light machine guns and the rest were Type 95. Just like that, they swept across the area. When the bullets landed among the shadows, there were screams after screams. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Yang Qindong's voice sounded in the dark night. Unknowingly, he was already standing in the small courtyard. Beta Persei and Dao Xiao were standing on either side of him. The gunshots did not seem to have any intention of stopping. In less than a minute, the last 50 black-clothed people had all fallen into a pool of blood. From the beginning to the end, they did not even have a chance to draw their swords. They did not even see the shadows of their opponents before they were all turned into corpses. Young Master is amazing. Beta Persei and Dao Xiao looked at each other and sighed. Just an hour ago, Yang Qindong suddenly called them, including Ba Daojiang, and asked them to be prepared to face the enemy at any time. Sure enough, the enemy appeared. They were caught off guard and did not cause any losses to themselves. This was how Beta Persei and the others admired Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong was a human, not a god. Of course, he did not know if the enemy would appear or when they would appear. He only had an instinctive feeling that Zhuhu 81 would not be idle on the first night. If things went wrong, he would launch a probing attack. That was why he called Beta Persei and the others to prepare. However, he took this opportunity to go to the empty house in the backyard. With his strength as a grandmaster, he did not attract anyone's attention. Then, the place was filled with all kinds of weapons and ammunition taken out from the warehouse. After everything was done, Yang Qindong could finally breathe a sigh of relief. With the existence of these firearms, anyone who wanted to cause trouble for him would only be courting death. The gunshots in the courtyard quickly attracted the attention of General Wang Zhanjiang, who was in charge of security outside the courtyard. He rushed into the courtyard with a large number of soldiers from the 3 provinces. At this time, the torches had been lit and shone on the corpses. What's going on? What's going on? Wang Zhanjiang, who rushed into the courtyard, instinctively pulled out his sword. This action immediately attracted the aim of no less than 5 black muzzles. This really scared him. He felt as if his whole body could not move at this moment. Put down your guns. Beta Persei strode over and said loudly to the black cavalry. Then he looked at Wang Zhanjiang and said righteously, General Wang, these people are all assassins. They wanted to harm Bugnam of Gojoseon, but we found them and killed them all. But I don't know how so many people appeared here. What are your people doing outside? This? Wang Zhanjiang did not know how to answer. Chen Tian did not inform him of this probing operation because he did not want to complicate things. So General Wang, who was completely unaware, did not know how to answer. Looking at Wang Zhanjiang's stammering and flushed face, Yang Er shook his head. Without waiting for Wang Zhanjiang's answer, he said, All right, since you're here, I'll have to trouble you to transport these corpses out. After speaking, Beta Persei turned to leave. At this time, Ba Daojiang came forward and whispered, Second brother, we've used up 1/5 of our gunpowder in this battle. If this continues, I'm afraid. Let's go back and talk. Beta Persei glared at Ba Daojiang. then turned and strode away. And all this was seen by Wang Zhanjiang. At this moment, his heart trembled, as if he had understood something. Because of Wang Zhanjiang's arrival, the assassins' corpses were quickly moved out by the three provinces' army. Then the general went straight to the three provinces' palace without stopping. Chen Tian did not go back to rest. He was waiting for news here. After seeing Wang Zhanjiang's arrival, he and Zhu Huiqiu listened to his report seriously. After hearing that the 150 skilled assassins were all dead and did not cause any casualties to the five-star army, both Zhu Huiqiu and Chen Tian stopped talking. They did not expect this operation to be successful, but at least they could injure some of the black cavalry. But now, it seemed that they had underestimated their opponent's strength. My king, Lord Chen, this general also heard some news. Wang Zhanjiang thought for a while and decided to tell them what he heard. Oh, what news? Zhu Huiqiu asked. Wang Zhanjiang wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He was obviously shocked by the black cavalry's killing methods. He quickly calmed himself down and said, "This general heard that the black cavalry used up 1/5 of their gunpowder." What? Hearing this, Chen Tian exclaimed. He took a step forward and asked Wang Zhanjiang with his face almost touching, "General Wang, what did you just say? Please repeat it." Wang Zhanjiang was shocked by Chen Tian's action, but he still repeated what he said just now. Ha ha, ha ha ha. After confirming that he heard it clearly this time, Chen Tian laughed and turned to Zhu Huiqiu. He clasped his hands and said, "Congratulations, my king. This time, we are 100% sure that we can take down Yang Chenong. Even if he is not alive, he is definitely dead." Ha ha ha, not bad, not bad. Zhu Huiqiu seemed to have thought of something and nodded excitedly. The black cavalry was powerful, but they only relied on their powerful firearms. Without the support of gunpowder, what was the difference between these firearms and firewood? Understood. Continue to probe. At the crucial moment, we can put on a show. As for Yang Chendong, we can just push all the blame to the Sheeping Palace. Through this test, Zhu Huichun had more confidence in his heart, and he immediately spoke of the next step of the plan. This also caused Chen Tian, who was standing at the side, to nod his head repeatedly. Then, he said, "Your Majesty is wise." That was an earth-shattering flattery. It was as if at this moment, they could already see Yang Chendong being heavily surrounded and at the end of his rope. Chapter 1564. In the courtyard, Beta Persei reported to Yang Chendong, especially what Ba Daojiang said just now. Then he said with a puzzled look, "Young master, why do we have to inform the enemy that we don't have enough ammunition?" Yang Chendong smiled lightly when he heard this and said, "If we don't tell the enemy, how can they jump over the wall? Young master has too many things to do, so I won't waste too much time here. The sooner they make a move, the better." Beta Persei showed an expression of understanding after hearing this, but then he said with a sad face, "But young master, we really don't have much ammunition. Everyone is riding on war horses, and their equipment is already very heavy. We really can't bring too much gunpowder." "It's okay, the gunpowder has been sent over. It's in the row of houses in the backyard. It's enough for you to kill tens of thousands of people, ha ha ha." Yang Chendong was in a very good mood at this moment. He had done what he needed to do now. He was just waiting for the other party to lose their patience and finally come knocking on his door. Then he could take advantage of the situation and launch the final counterattack. He believed that this would not take too long. Beta Persei had already disappeared by this time. Needless to say, he went to the backyard to check on the firearms and ammunition. When he saw the house that was thousands of square meters full of all kinds of weapons and ammunition, his mouth opened so wide that he could easily stuff an egg into it. After a while, Beta Persei couldn't help but say to himself, "Who sent this? How did it get here? Why didn't the black cavalry notice it at all? Fortunately, it's an ally. If it was an enemy, wouldn't it be too scary?" Beta Persei, who had enough ammunition, was naturally not afraid. Thinking back to the time when the 2,000 black cavalry had enough ammunition, even the 100,000 Baiming Liaodong iron cavalry could be dealt with. Although they only had 500 people now, it would not be a problem for them to eliminate tens of thousands of soldiers from the three provinces. How would Zhu Huili know about this? After a discussion with Chen Tian and Wang Zhanjiang, He only needed to wait for the next night to arrive. He would then make his move and exhaust the enemy's ammunition until an opportunity presented itself. He would then go straight for the middle of the army and capture Yang Chendong alive. Just as Yang Chendong thought, Zhu Huichun would not wait for too long. He wanted to catch Yang Chendong too much. He wanted to prove himself too much. He wanted to become a true king, or even an emperor. The night passed, and the next morning, the Black Cavalry began to change shifts. Those on duty went to sleep, while the Black Cavalry who had enough sleep got up and took over the defense work. However, before his opponent arrived, Dong Chuanfu was the first to come. He stood respectfully outside the small courtyard, and after announcing his name, he stood there obediently and waited to be received. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that every day felt like a year. Every day, he and the other members of the diplomatic mission passed in fear. No one knew when the three provincial kings would be in a bad mood and suddenly surround them and kill them. Fortunately, no killing intent appeared, and they finally persevered until Yang Chendong arrived. Dong Chuanfu could be considered to have completed his mission, and before he left, he had to come and see the king. This was his duty as a subject. Yang Chendong slept well in the second half of the night, but Beta Persei was a little excited and had a pair of panda eyes. Ba Daojiang walked into the courtyard and reported that Dong Chuanfu had asked for an audience outside the door. After hearing this, Yang Chendong nodded and said, "Then let him in." After a while, Dong Chuanfu, who was dressed in a Chinese tunic suit, came in front of Yang Chendong. He then knelt down and greeted him, respectfully calling him Your Majesty and greeting him well. "Get up." Letting Dong Chuanfu kneel on the ground, Yang Chendong didn't stop him. He knew that these people who used to be officials in the great Ming dynasty attached great importance to etiquette. If he dared not to let him kneel, he would inevitably be nagged and his ears would suffer. "How is it? Have you gained anything during this time?" With a slight smile on his face, Yang Chendong said with a pleasant expression. Although these people have made inappropriate remarks, Yang Wu reported in the telegram that these people are still very honest and competent for the work in hand. It's just that their thinking is somewhat traditional. If it wasn't for the fact that he was upright, how could he have become a vice minister? How could Yang Chendong tolerate them until now? Of course, Dong Chuanfu was found by Yu Qian. Needless to say, people who can be recognized by this person are not worried about their standing. When asked what he had learned, Dong Chuanfu, who had just stood up, sighed and said, "Your Majesty, this king of the three provinces is really too hateful. Ever since we came here, we have never seen him. Not only does he put on a high and mighty appearance, but he also frequently makes the soldiers guarding us make frightening movements. He is really hateful. It's also thanks to your Majesty's wisdom that we can suppress him and make him obediently surrender to us." Even at this time, Dong Chuanfu was still kind enough to think that Yang Chendong's arrival was really to accept Zhu Huihua's surrender. Regarding this, Yang Chendong didn't mean to explain. He didn't want to show off his greatness in front of his officials, as if his appearance saved these people. Although this was the truth, but even without these people, in the face of righteousness, Yang Chendong was skilled and bold, and would still make this trip. He also didn't want to say that the reason why Zhu Huihua let Dong Chuanfu and the others go was because they were useless, and letting them go could also show his benevolence and make him famous. Well, this time when you go back, work hard. You also need to know that in this world, the so-called justice is just in the end, whose fist is bigger. Otherwise, the weak will not have any right to speak and receive any respect. If you have time, you can tell your colleagues about your experience. Perhaps a country can be ruled by law, by etiquette, and by virtue. But a country must be founded with one's fist. This is a principle that hasn't been repeated for thousands of years. Sometimes, killing people is also to save more people, understand? It was rare for Yang Chendong to say so much at once. Dong Chuanfu remembered it all in his heart and quickly bowed his head and said, "I will remember your Majesty's teachings." "Good, go back. Leave in the morning, there's no need to stay." After Yang Chendong gave Dong Chuanfu one last warning, he waved his hand, and Ba Daojiang walked up and led him away. Yang Chendong slowly closed his eyes and thought about the current situation. There were only 3 reasons why Zhu Huihua didn't kill Dong Chuanfu and the others. First, it was disdain. After all, with a big fish like him around, everyone else could be ignored. Second, it was to confuse him and make him feel that the other party was really unwell, which was why they didn't come to negotiate. Then, if he was careless, it would be time for the other party to bare his fangs. Third, it was to make a name for himself. However, that was because he could kill him. If he couldn't do that, then the third reason was useless. Fine, Zhu Huihua, continue acting. Let's see if you can swallow me this time, or if I can become Sun Wukong and wreak havoc in Princess Ironfan's stomach and win in the end. The day passed uneventfully. Only in the morning did Qin Tian come over. Other than asking young Qindong how he slept last night, he also reported that Dong Chuanfu and the others had left the city. At the same time, he also said that their king Zhu Huihua's health had improved a little, but it would take a few more days for him to fully recover. He asked young Qindong to be understanding and wait patiently. Who didn't know how to act? Yang Qindong reprimanded Qin Tian in front of him, saying that the killers that appeared last night had a lot to do with the lack of protection from the 3 provinces. Then, he said that he was busy with official business and couldn't wait here for more than a few days. If Zhu Huichun still couldn't come to see him in 3 days at most, he would leave. At that time, he would bring the steel cavalry. Hearing Yang Qindong give a deadline of 3 days, Qin Tian was happy, but he pretended to be serious and said, "Yes, please rest assured, Bugnam of Gojozian. In 3 days, my king's health should be able to hold on until he comes to see you. As for what happened last night, they have already investigated. It was done by Shiping Wang's Mu family. It should be the southern Ming court's intention." He also said that since the other side didn't succeed, they won't let it go. They might continue to attack, but he will tell the guards outside to strengthen their defenses. Is he trying to give me a heads up? Yang Qindong thought in his heart, but he didn't say anything. This was the game. There were all kinds of tricks, and there was nothing to object to. If Yang Qindong didn't need to do this to obtain the righteous cause and take control of the 3 provinces, he wouldn't have to go through so much trouble. However, the 3 provinces were Han territory, and there were Han people here. If he didn't want the people to suffer too much, it was inevitable that he had to play some tricks. Qin Tian left, but when he returned, he reported the information to Zhu Huiyun. The two discussed that they had to use up all the firearms and ammunition brought by the Black Cavalry in 3 nights. If they couldn't do it in 3 nights, they would turn hostile on the 4th day. In short, they couldn't let Yang Qindong escape. Even if they couldn't capture him alive, they had to kill him and leave behind a corpse. Passively taking a beating wasn't Yang Qindong's personality. He was surrounded by Wang Zhanjiang's army in the small courtyard and couldn't get out, but he had a radio. He used the radio to broadcast what happened last night to the head of the security bureau, Yang San, who had arrived at Yunnan Manor earlier. Yes, this time, Yang San was also ordered to rush to Yunnan Manor. His main task was to investigate which traitor colluded with the 3 provinces' kings and sold out Yang Xie and the 5-star army. In the past few years, Yang San's activities were mostly in the Baiming area. Although Yang Xie didn't have the intention to use force there were too many young masters' relatives in the capital of Baiming. Not to mention others, Yang Qindong's brothers and sisters were all here. Chapter 1565. Ever since Yang Qindong had left Baiming's capital and headed south, his relatives in the capital had been treated like an otherworldly existence. Even though the Baiming emperor and a few important officials loathed them, they didn't dare to do anything. This situation was very strange and complicated. Yang Qindong wouldn't be at ease if he sent someone else. Therefore, he handed the matter of the southern Ming to Yang Lu, and the matter of the northern Ming to Yang San. Over the years, Yang San had done a very good job. Under the watchful eyes of others, the Yang clan's relatives hadn't been attacked by any external forces. But at the beginning of this year, Yang Qindong's eldest sister, Yang Fei, had passed away due to illness at the age of 59. In that era, living to 60 was already considered a long life. This was something that no one could resist. But because Yang Qindong was busy and couldn't personally go due to special circumstances, he left everything to Yang San. He took care of it. As soon as the funeral was over, Yang San received a new order. Without stopping, he rushed to the 3 provinces and secretly entered the southern Cloud Manor. With the capabilities of the security bureau, He naturally had a special way to enter the city without being discovered by Zhu Huichuan's spies. This order was passed down by Yang Chendong to Yang San, asking him to spread the news in the city. Last night, someone wanted to harm him and spread Chen Tian's words. Furthermore, he emphasized that he had to spread the news to the commoners and let them know that if anything happened to him here, the five-star army would definitely be enraged and would flatten this place. At that time, the first ones to suffer would definitely be the commoners at the lowest level. This was why Yang Chendong was willing to be bait. How to guide the public opinion, how to make the public opinion work for him, how to use the public opinion to achieve his goals, and so on. As a person of the future, he was very clear about this. Don't underestimate the public opinion. If things were done well, it could hold up against hundreds of thousands of soldiers. After sending out the telegram, Yang San didn't disappoint. Not long after, rumors began to appear in Yunnan Manor, spreading to the restaurants and markets where people gathered. Some of the citizens had also heard about the gunshots that were heard in the city last night. At first, they didn't know what this meant, but after hearing those rumors, they suddenly realized that someone was trying to harm Bugnam of Gojoseon. As the rumors spread more and more, all kinds of unfavorable news began to spread among the people. After 4 hours of fermenting, the public opinion was boiling in the afternoon, and the news had spread to the extent that everyone in the streets and alleys knew about it. Have you heard? Last night, there were assassins who rushed into the courtyard where Bugnam of Gojoseon lived. Just the sound of gunfire alone has been ringing for a long time. Why haven't I heard about it? Everyone knows about it now. Hey, who do you think is so daring? Guns are so powerful. Aren't we just going to die? Come on, what do you care about? Did you not consider what would happen if the assassins hurt Bugnam of Gojoseon? What would happen? This sentence attracted the attention of many people in the tea house. Think about it. If something happened to Bugnam of Gojoseon in our Yunnan Manor, wouldn't his brave subordinates seek revenge? If that's the case, who will be the unlucky one in the end? After about a few breaths, someone seemed to have reacted. If something happened to Bugnam of Gojoseon in our place, I'm afraid that the five-star army will definitely trample our Yunnan Manor to avenge their king. Then, won't we, the citizens, suffer? More than suffering, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive. Hiss. What followed was the sound of people inhaling cold air. This probably won't happen. We all know this. How can the three kings not know this? He will definitely send people to protect Bugnam of Gojoseon. There were still people in the crowd who were hoping for a fluke and said, "Protect Bugnam of Gojoseon?" I'm afraid you still don't know. Ever since Bugnam of Gojoseon came to our Yunnan Manor yesterday, the three kings claimed to be sick and didn't come to see him. Who knows what he's thinking? Maybe those assassins were sent by the three kings. Silence, silence. How can you talk about these things? Maybe the three kings are really sick? Some people didn't agree with this point of view and took the initiative to explain for Zhu Huichun. Really sick? If that's the case, then it's good. I'm afraid that they have ulterior motives. Sigh, if that's the case, then what should we do? Then, why don't we go and protect Bugnam of Gojoseon, or persuade him to leave? Anyway, he can't be hurt here. Who said no? I thought that the three kings were clear. After Bugnam of Gojoseon came, we, the citizens, would be at peace. Who would have thought that things would turn out like this? Sigh, isn't this going back on their word? Under the guidance of a few young Xie's intelligence personnel, the public opinion began to develop in a direction that was favorable to Yang Chendong and unfavorable to Zhu Huichun. As more and more people discussed, the citizens in the tea house gathered around. Later, it was unknown who suggested it, but in the end, this was the result. First, everyone split up and went to the three kings' mansions to petition them. They asked the three kings to meet with Bugnam of Gojoseon to discuss the peace talks. Second, the rest of the people went to the courtyard where Bugnam of Gojoseon lived. Everyone was to protect him on their own. In short, before the matter was clarified, nothing could happen to Yang Chendong. Otherwise, they would be the ones in trouble. After the discussion came to a conclusion, the citizens in the tea house quickly dispersed. Everyone began to contact people. For matters that concerned the life and death of their own family, no one would ignore it and no one would be indifferent. The streets of southern Cloud Manor became lively after this discussion was spread out. Many commoners began to gather. A portion of them headed straight for the three provincial princes' residences. A portion of them headed straight for the small courtyard where Yang Chendong lived with sticks and iron weapons. The appearance of one citizen naturally did not attract the attention of the three provinces' army. It was the same even if there were 10 or 100 of them. However, when the number of people increased to the point that there were thousands of them, even the army felt afraid. Is this a mass uprising? When he learned that there were more than 5,000 citizens with all kinds of weapons coming in the direction of the courtyard, General Wang Zhanjiang, who was guarding there, was puzzled. He did not know why such a thing happened. Could it be that the citizens wanted to take Bugnam of Gojoseon's life? When this idea appeared, Wang Zhanjiang felt that it was an opportunity. If Yang Chenong died in the hands of the citizens, then it had nothing to do with him. He could also complete the task given by the king. Wouldn't it be the best of both worlds? At that moment, Wang Zhanjiang ordered the soldiers guarding outside not to put up much resistance. They only needed to put up a symbolic resistance to the commoners. If they really wanted to rush into the small courtyard, then they could do as they wished. Anyway, these citizens were spontaneous and not organized by him. If something really happened, it would have nothing to do with him. Without anyone stopping them, the citizens easily arrived outside the courtyard. Then, under Wang Zhanjiang's stupefied gaze, these people surrounded the 6 doors of the small courtyard and sat down on the ground. From the looks of it, it was clear that they were not going to leave. At this moment, Wang Zhanjiang could tell that these people were not here to cause trouble for Yang Chenong. They were clearly here to protect this person. When he thought that with the presence of these citizens, tonight's operation would not be able to proceed normally, cold sweat broke out on Wang Zhanjiang's forehead. Men, chase these citizens out. Quickly chase them away. When the soldiers of the 3 provinces who were originally standing around and watching heard the general shout, they all walked forward reluctantly. However, how could it be so easy for 1,000 soldiers to chase away 5,000 citizens? The outside of the courtyard was very lively. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of the black cavalry in the courtyard. Commander Dao Xiao, who was in charge of the day shift, immediately sent people out to understand the situation. After knowing the general cause of the matter, he reported it to Yang Chendong in the main courtyard, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The citizens want to help us guard the courtyard? This is a good thing. This proves that the young master has the support of the citizens. The straightforward Beta Persei was elated when he heard this and bared his teeth. Yang Chendong, who had closed the book in his hand, also had a warm smile on his face. He could not help but sigh in his heart. This was the power of the citizens. Although they usually did not show their strength, when it came to their interests or even life and death, they would erupt with a powerful force. Wasn't the reason why the great Ming dynasty was destroyed in history because of the various uprisings of the citizens? First, the country was in chaos, and this gave the slaves an opportunity to take advantage of it. At this moment, he showed some interest. He wanted to see what these citizens would do. Outside the courtyard, the soldiers and the citizens were confronting each other. Because of the difference in numbers, the soldiers of the 3 provinces did not have any advantage. Although they all had standard swords in their hands, they did not dare to casually kill the citizens. What if they angered the citizens and caused a mutiny? What's more, the soldiers were originally made up of commoners, and some of them were originally from the southern Cloud Manor. His friends and relatives were among these 5,000 people, so how could they bear to kill them? In the chaos, the situation was already out of control. Wang Zhanjiang had no choice but to retreat and go straight to the 3 provincial palaces to ask for reinforcements. At this time, the 3 provincial palaces were also not peaceful. Thousands of citizens were gathered outside, shouting loudly. They wanted the 3 provincial kings to see Bugnam of Gojoseon and discuss the peace talks together. Bugnam of Gojoseon is already here. Now is the time for us to show our sincerity. We can't go back on our words. That's right. A person must be honest. He came to our territory without worry. We can't treat Bugnam of Gojoseon like this. Willing to invite the 3 provincial kings to go to the peace talks. Willing to invite the 3 provincial kings to go to the peace talks. Chapter 1566. More and more voices rang out, and finally, they converged into one sentence. Outside the mansion, the shouts grew louder and louder. Inside the mansion, Zhu Huiqiu's expression was very ugly. He couldn't understand why the situation had suddenly changed. What had happened? Chen Tian had been urgently summoned from the backyard of the mansion. When he heard the shouts outside, he said nervously, "Your Majesty, this matter must be suppressed. We can't agree to the people's demands." Zhu Huiqiu rolled his eyes at Chen Tian. Isn't this nonsense? It wasn't easy to trick Yang Chendong into coming here. How could he be satisfied if he didn't teach him a lesson? That's enough, Chen Gonggong. Let's talk about what we should do now. Okay. Chen Tian fell into deep thought, but as expected of Zhu Huiqiu's think tank, he quickly raised his head again. Your Majesty, we can only stall for time now. At the same time, we have to act quickly. Chen Tian took a step forward and reported his idea to Zhu Huiqiu in a low voice. Zhu Huiqiu kept nodding as he listened. Finally, he waved his arm and said, "That's right. Let's do it this way. But it's a pity. I'm afraid it will be difficult to capture Yang Chendong alive and use him for our own purposes." Your Majesty, don't worry. When the time is right, I will have a good talk with Bugnam of Gojoseon. I don't think anyone is willing to die. Maybe there's still a chance. I hope so. Chen Gonggong, I'll leave this matter to you. Go ahead and do it. Zhu Huiqiu waved his hand and sighed. After watching Chen Tian leave, he thought for a moment and went straight to the backyard of the mansion. In the backyard, Imo Gue was sitting in front of the pond. He seemed to know that Zhu Huiqiu was coming. There were 2 teacups in front of him, and the tea was still steaming. King of the 3 provinces, please take a seat. Imo Gue modestly invited Zhu Huiqiu to take a seat in front of him. Zhu Huiyun admired Imo Gue's calmness very much. His originally restless heart seemed to have calmed down at this moment. Mr. Imo, I'm actually here to ask for your advice. In your opinion, how do you think we should resolve the current situation? Imo Gue wasn't surprised by Zhu Huiqiu's answer. After a sigh, he said, Your Highness, as I said before, my master's intention is to wait for Yang Chendong to enter the courtyard before making a move. After all, there are only 500 people. As long as we do our best and don't fear losses, the victory will be ours. To deal with Yang Chendong, either you don't make a move, or you have to go all out. You can't have the slightest bit of wishful thinking, and you can't even try to probe him. Seeing that Imo Huiguan was about to go on, Zhu Huiqun quickly interrupted him. Mr. Imo, let's not talk about what happened before. Let's talk about what to do next. I really didn't expect this Bugnam of Gojoseon to know how to threaten the people's will. Now this prince has a headache. Haha, it doesn't matter. We just have to make a move later. I just don't know if your highness is ready to make a move now. Imo Gue said the word yes in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. Of course we have to make a move. I've already discussed it with Mr. Chan. We'll do our best tonight. We have to take down Bugnam of Gojoseon, dead or alive. Zhu Huiqun told Imo Gue about Chen Tian's idea. Good. Since your highness has made up your mind, don't worry about it. If anything happens, my master won't just stand by and watch. My master has prepared a backup plan. Yang Chendong must die. Imo Gue's face was full of murderous intent as he said this. This was the final mission his master gave him. If he didn't complete it well, his head would roll. In comparison, he certainly hoped that Yang Chendong would die, not him. When Zhu Huiqun heard Imo Gue say that he had a backup plan, he felt good. This was the result he wanted. Now that he had achieved his goal, he nodded with satisfaction. Good. I'll have to trouble Mr. Imo. Of course, if you need my help in any way, just let me know. Ha ha ha. The change in public opinion made Zhu Huiqun's 3-day attack turn into a 1-day attack. He was going to see the results tonight. For this, Wang Zhanjiang received a large number of reinforcements. A total of 4,000 soldiers rushed out of the courtyard. 5,000 soldiers fought against 5,000 civilians and chased away the stick-wielding civilians. When the commoners saw so many soldiers from the 3 provinces outside the small courtyard, their anxious hearts relaxed. With so many soldiers protecting Bugnam of Gojoseon, their safety shouldn't be a problem. They scattered in all directions. However, When Yang Qindong, who was in the courtyard, learned about the situation outside, his expression became much more dignified. He had a feeling that it was time for the dagger to be revealed. Beta Persei, take out all the weapons and ammunition of the Black Cavalry and equip them. Young master, are they going to make a move? Beta Persei asked cautiously. Maybe, maybe not. But it's not wrong to be prepared. Go do it. Yang Qindong waved his hand, then returned to his desk and began to draft a telegram. Once Zhu Huichun turned hostile, he would have to send the main force of the 5-star army to the 3 provinces. At that time, he would have the right to do so. This time, the other party didn't want to give him face. Presumably, once the news spread, the civilians would understand his decision to send troops, and there would be less resistance. It had to be said that for the safety of the 3 provinces, Yang Qindong did a lot and was willing to take this risk. This was completely in line with his goal of bringing the Han people to the top of the world. 5,000 against 500. This was the first dish that Zhu Huichun prepared for Yang Qindong. If things didn't go well, he would continue to deploy troops. Speaking of which, in Yunnan Prefecture, he had 50,000 troops stationed there. He didn't believe that he couldn't kill Yang Qindong with 100 times the force. In a courtyard 2 alleys away from Yang Qindong's courtyard, 200-strong warriors were sharpening their swords. If Zhu Huichun could see them, he would recognize that the leader was Mu Ong from the Mu family of the Sheeping King. Mu Ong, the nephew of the current Sheeping King, Mu Bin, was the bravest person in the younger generation of the Mu family. Even Mu Bin's eldest son, Mu Tsong, couldn't compare to him. It was because of his bravery that he was given the task of assassinating Yang Qindong. Yang Qindong's existence was a great threat to the great Ming dynasty's political power. It could be said that as long as this person didn't die, it was only a matter of time before he replaced the great Ming dynasty's political power. Because of this, after hearing that Yang Qindong had entered Yunnan Prefecture with only 500 black cavalry, Mu Ong was immediately sent out. The purpose was to complete the task of assassinating Bugnam of Gojoseon. This was a risky move, but when Mu Bin, the king of Sheeping, found Mu Ong, he brought his 200 men of sacrifice to Yunnan Prefecture without saying a word and successfully went into hiding. As a member of the Mu family, they were very familiar with Yunnan Prefecture. These 200 men of sacrifice were deeply indebted to the Mu family, so they came with the intention of returning the favor. To put it bluntly, they didn't plan to return alive. The small courtyard was silent, showing the excellent quality of the men of sacrifice. In the corner, Mu Bin was talking in a low voice with the leader of the men of sacrifice. The general idea was that there was a new movement on Zhu Huiyun's side. It seemed that he was going to make a move on Bugnam of Gojoseon and Yang Qindong tonight. Well, keep an eye on them. It's fine if they succeed. If they don't succeed, it'll be our turn to attack. In short, Yang Qindong must die. Mu Ang's face was unusually firm, holding the idea of success or death. The Mu family was indebted to the Zhu family and guarded Nanjiang for the great Ming dynasty. Everything changed because of the appearance of Yang Qindong. Now, not only did they lose their foundation in Yunnan, but they were also hiding in a small place like Kelisai, not daring to show their faces. Gradually, the name of the Mu family was forgotten by the world. This was something that Mu Ong didn't want to face. Just when the Mu family was feeling helpless, they learned that Yang Qindong had entered Yunnan Prefecture to negotiate with Zhu Huiyun, the king of 3 provinces. They were like people who were groping in the dark, suddenly seeing the sun, suddenly giving birth to new hope. In other words, if Yang Qindong died, the Mu family had to live. Otherwise, they would die without a doubt. Once the king of 3 provinces was defeated by Yang Qindong, the Mu family would have no soil to live on. Even if they died, they would have no face to see their ancestors. For the sake of the entire Mu family, it was just sacrificing these 200 men of sacrifice and Mu Ong. What was the big deal? Mu Ong made up his mind at this moment. However, what he didn't know was that in a small courtyard in the southern Cloud Manor, there was a group of men in black who were also preparing to fight to the death. They were relatively short, but their murderous aura didn't diminish. They were faintly discernible in the darkness. Yang Qindong didn't know that there was more than one enemy, but he was definitely not afraid. In his goal of achieving the great Han people's revival, he was destined to walk on an unusual path, and was destined to be full of danger. Beta Persei had already taken out firearms and ammunition with Dao Xiao and Ba Daojiang and equipped themselves. Not only that, they also took out all the things that could be used and built several blockades. With Yang Qindong's courtyard as the center, they built an arch-shaped temporary trench. Although they couldn't exert their full combat power due to the limitations of the environment and tools, as long as the other party didn't have artillery, it would be difficult to break through their defense line. Tell the soldiers to put on all their equipment. They must protect their own safety. Young Master said that it's fine if the army of 3 provinces doesn't attack, but if they do, they will use all their strength. Our opponents are 10 times, 100 times, or even more enemies. Beta Persei faced a group of black cavalry squad captains and said this with a serious expression. Chapter 1567. Beta Persei couldn't understand why the young master didn't allow them to take the initiative to attack. The situation was obviously very dangerous, and Zhu Huihua's ambitions were completely exposed. What they should do now was to take advantage of the fact that it wasn't dark and suddenly kill their way out. This way, they could catch the other party off guard. Coupled with the undercover intelligence agents in the city, the chances of them leaving the city would be greatly increased. In the eyes of Beta Persei and the other black cavalry, Yang Qindong's safety was naturally the first priority. In order to complete this mission, everyone was willing to sacrifice themselves. They really couldn't figure out why Yang Qindong still hadn't made such a decision. But they didn't know that Yang Qindong had his own reasons for doing so. He wanted to take this opportunity to find out who the traitor was. Ever since he found out about the traitor, Yang Qindong felt like he was sitting on a needle. The feeling that someone could harm him anytime and anywhere made him feel very uncomfortable. In order to solve this problem, Yang Qindong risked his life to come to Yunnan Manor. He didn't believe that the traitor would still hide and not make a move under such an opportunity. As long as the traitor made a move, Yang San might discover something. Once he discovered the traitor, it would be the time for the real acquisition. Only then would the risk be worth it. Taking advantage of this opportunity to let the traitor jump out and then catch them all in one fell swoop was another main purpose of Yang Qindong's trip. As for whether the black cavalry would be in danger by doing this, with the firearms and ammunition he took out from the warehouse, it shouldn't be too big of a problem even if there was a problem. In order to completely eliminate the hidden danger, this risk was worth taking. Once Zhu Huihuo brazenly started to make a move, the nearby 5-star army would gather together. At that time, the 500 black cavalry dragon guards would only need to hold on for 3 days, and the main army would arrive. The danger would also be resolved. These 3 days were the opportunity for the traitor to make a move. He also believed that it would be difficult for the traitor to hold back. After all, it was such a good opportunity. If he didn't make a move, it would be hard to say whether there would be such a chance next time. Sitting in the main hall of the main room, Yang Qindong had already asked Wang Shan to send a telegram to Yang San, asking him to keep a close eye on every move of the 3 provinces, regardless of who they contacted. Or if someone contacted them on their own initiative, they had to follow this clue and investigate it thoroughly. In short, they had to take this opportunity to find the traitor. The black cavalry began to make various preparations, and the sky gradually darkened. Finally, the sky turned completely dark, and the sound of the night watch rang out. About 10 miles into the night, there was finally some movement outside the courtyard. The sound of a large number of footsteps could be heard. Everyone, get ready. Let's give them a taste of grenades first. The person in charge of the first line of defense was Ba Daojiang, the vice captain of the Black Cavalry's 1st Battalion. Beta Persei had already informed him that 5 of the 6 gates in the 2 courtyards had been firmly nailed from the inside. In order to prevent the enemy from climbing over the walls, they had buried landmines on the ground of the walls to ensure that no matter how many enemies came, they would all die. This was the only gate in the 6 gates that could be entered at any time. Ba Daojiang was guarding this gate. There were already several light and heavy machine guns set up here, forming a powerful firepower net to ensure that no one could pass through the net and rush in. A full 4 days of dry food and water had also been prepared. As soon as the battle started, the telegraph office would send out a request for help. Then, 3 days later, the main force of the 5-star army would arrive outside Yunnan Mansion. At that time, the situation would be settled. Within these 3 days, Yang Qindong's safety would be completely handed over to the 500 Black Cavalry. Everyone was both excited and worried about this sacred mission. They were excited that such a great mission was handed over to them. After completing the mission, this would be the most exciting experience of their lives. They were worried that if the enemy rushed in and hurt the sixth young master, even if it was just a hair, they would not be able to atone for it even if they died 100 times. We must not let the sixth young master suffer even the slightest bit of harm. This was the common thought of the 500 Black Cavalry. In order to achieve this goal, everyone took out 100% of their spirit, loaded their guns, and aimed at the enemy. The sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. It seemed that the 3 provincial armies were gathering outside. This created a dark cloud over the people's heads. If it was an ordinary army, they would have been so nervous that they would be sweating profusely. They might even be trembling all over and unable to hold their weapons tightly. After all, they only had 500 people. The 3 provincial armies alone had more than 50,000 soldiers in Yunnan Mansion. This ratio of 1 to 100 sounded really scary. Even if they were holding firearms that were more advanced than this era, the enemy's advantage in numbers was still like a dark cloud. It was so oppressive that it made it hard for them to breathe. However, with 500 Black Cavalry, they were much calmer. As veterans of hundreds of battles, as the Black Cavalry who had participated in 2,000 against 100,000 and defeated the enemy without suffering any injuries, they were only excited. In their eyes, the so-called 50,000 enemies were all military exploits. Time passed by minute. The footsteps outside were getting louder and louder. As the Black Cavalry who had rich combat experience, they could tell from the sound of the footsteps that there were at least 3,000 enemies, maybe even more. There were only about 100 soldiers who were guarding this door with Ba Daojiang. However, they were not afraid at all. This was because among the 100 soldiers, there were more than 10 light and heavy machine guns. This gave them a strong sense of confidence. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of the door being knocked was finally heard. The wooden door that was only rigged with a few wooden wedges soon vibrated. At the same time, the soldiers of the 3 provincial armies shouted, "Brothers inside the door, open the door quickly. There are assassins here. We need to go in and search for the assassins." Ba Daojiang scoffed at this lame excuse. He held the grenade in his hand, ready to pull the pin at any time, waiting to throw it out. After a few shouts, the soldiers of the 3 provincial armies finally pushed the wooden door open. They did not expect the Black Cavalry to answer them or open the door. The shouts just now were just an excuse for them to show up. The moment the wooden door was pushed open, a black mass of figures appeared. Countless soldiers of the 3 provincial armies rushed in like a sluice gate. "Throw it." Ba Daojiang did not hesitate. After shouting, he threw the grenade in his hand forward. Along with it, hundreds of other grenades were thrown forward. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of explosions rose one after another in the dark night. Under the loud explosions, there was a series of screams and screams. Type 95 open fire. As soon as the grenades exploded, Ba Daojiang gave the order. Then, a series of shots were fired in the direction of the door. Some of the soldiers of the 3 provincial armies who were rushing forward or trying to climb over the wall cried out in pain. This was just the first round of attacks, and there were probably hundreds of casualties or serious injuries. Outside the other 5 doors, there was also a series of explosions. Needless to say, someone must have stepped on a landmine and caused an explosion. This was a sign that the enemy had launched an all-out attack. After a series of gunshots, the area in front of the wooden door became much quieter. The soldiers of the 3 provincial armies quickly retreated after leaving a trail of corpses on the ground. It was obvious that they were just testing the waters. The Black Cavalry was the best of the best. The soldiers of the 3 provincial armies did not expect to be able to break into the courtyard in a single charge. "Quick, this door is open. Everyone, gather here." A thunderous voice came from outside the courtyard. Clearly, after the other courtyards were unable to be opened, this courtyard that was the only one that was opened attracted the attention of even more people. General Wang Zhanjiang, who was in charge of the attack outside the door, began to deploy his troops and rearrange the attack plan. The sturdiness of this courtyard was not bad. Even in the face of a few explosions, it did not collapse. It had to be said that the seriousness of the people in ancient times was much better than the shoddy construction of modern times. Originally, they were worried that the wall would collapse because of the explosion. If that happened, without anything to rely on, the difficulty of defending would be several times greater. Now that he knew that the walls were fine, the commander of this battle, Yang Er, heaved a sigh of relief. Very good, leave the rest to Ba Dao Jiang. We will continue to dig the tunnel. We must be quick, we don't have much time left. After speaking, Beta Persei did not care about the battle outside. He waved the military shovel and continued to rise to the ground. At this time, there was a huge pit nearly 2 meters deep on the ground, and it was still deepening. After about a quarter of an hour of rest, the soldiers of the 3 provincial armies outside the courtyard launched the second wave of attack. Compared to the last time, they had more people this time, and the momentum of the attack was more powerful. Everyone, don't be afraid. They don't have much firearms and ammunition. As long as they don't have firearms, they can't be our opponents. Charge! Wang Zhanjiang stood outside and shouted, cheering the soldiers on. Under the general's shout, a large number of figures appeared in front of the wooden door and on the wall. They were all fierce, cheering themselves on as they rushed forward to face the flying bullets. Pa-pa-pa, pa-pa-pa. Gunshots rang out again, and one by one, the black figures fell on the wooden door or on the courtyard wall. The figures that were alive and kicking just now were now bloody corpses. With just one wave of attack, at least hundreds of soldiers from the 3 provincial armies died. In this regard, Wang Zhanjiang, as the commander, did not have the slightest hint of pain on his face. These were all ordinary soldiers. In the eyes of the general, their lives were as cheap as dogs. If they died, they died. As long as there was money and food, they could quickly raise a new army. Chapter 1568. Charge. Continue to charge. The enemy's firearms can't possibly have unlimited gunpowder. Charge! Charge! Wang Zhanjiang yelled at the top of his lungs as he commanded the soldiers to charge into the courtyard one after another. It was as if they would not stop until they reached their goal. The charging troops came one after another. Even though the number of corpses on the ground was increasing, it still could not stop them from charging forward. As the charging momentum became more and more ferocious, they finally relied on their advantage in numbers to charge into the courtyard. They were less than 80 feet away from the black cavalry. Machine gun team, get ready. Fire in one shot. Other than occasionally shooting with the 95 style, Ba Dao Jiang had been observing the changes in the battle situation. Seeing that the enemy's attacks were getting more and more ferocious, he could no longer control the situation by relying on the 95 style. Hence, he gave the order to the machine gun team. The so-called fire in one shot referred to the fact that they could only fire a clip of bullets. This way, they could stabilize the situation and not waste bullets. The machine gun team members who were already itching for a fight could only watch helplessly when they saw their comrades killing the enemy to their heart's content. Now that they had finally received the order to open fire, how could they be courteous? All the light and heavy machine guns rang out, and the bullets rained down like rain. The soldiers of the 3 provinces who had barely escaped death fell to the ground one by one. Da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Under the sound of the machine guns, not a single living enemy could be seen in the courtyard in less than 20 seconds. The advantage that the 3 provincial armies had gained with great difficulty was wiped out in an instant. The dense sound of machine guns also caused the 3 provincial troops who were preparing to continue their charge to slow down. Then, Wang Zhanjiang yelled, "Stop charging! Stop charging!" They had no choice but to stop. Under such dense gunfire in the terrain that was less than 50 feet wide, the number of people sent out would be the same as the number of people who died. Calculate the casualties. Wang Zhanjiang yelled loudly. Then, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Just a moment ago, he was prepared to lead the charge in order to encourage the soldiers. After all, there were already people who had charged in. In his mind, as long as he could charge in front of the black cavalry, he would be able to utilize the advantage of cold weapons. At that time, with the advantage of superior numbers, he would be able to exhaust his opponents to death even if he had to exhaust them. However, a burst of concentrated gunfire made him think that it was a close call. At the same time, he also completely withdrew the idea of taking the lead to attack. That was a flintlock, and when it hit a person's body, a hole would appear and a person would die. Even if a civet turned around and had 9 lives, it would still die miserably in such a situation. Even so, if he had nothing better to do, why would he lead the charge? That was not a charge, but a fight to the death. At the same time, Wang Zhanjiang couldn't figure it out. When the black cavalry entered the city, he didn't see them carrying any heavy firearms. So what was going on? Also, didn't the black cavalry have limited ammunition? But from the looks of it, how could it be limited at all? They didn't have the slightest intention of saving when fighting. He cursed in his heart. He didn't know who provided the information that the 5-star army didn't have enough ammunition and almost got him killed. He then waited for the battle damage statistics. The Kiliarchs and Centurions below played their roles and quickly reported the battle situation to him, the commander of the army. When the final statistics came out, even though Wang Zhanjiang was already prepared, he still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. 3,200 people. From the beginning to the end, not even half an hour had passed, and 3,200 soldiers had died. Among them, there were 400 soldiers who died outside the other 5 courtyards. The number of soldiers who died at the courtyard gate in front of him reached 2,700. Looking at this shocking number, Wang Zhanjiang looked back in disbelief. Only then did he realize that the originally densely packed army had been reduced by a lot. Only a little more than a third of the original 5,000 people were left. Don't charge for now, wait for orders. Wang Zhanjiang quickly made the decision to stop the charge and report the battle results. After all, if he continued to charge, he was afraid that his less than 2,000 subordinates would only be feeding bullets to the enemy. If he didn't handle it well, the black cavalry would see through him. If they counterattacked, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to stop them even if he wanted to. He left a few confidants and ordered them to keep an eye on the 5-star army in the courtyard. No matter what, he couldn't let them suddenly go out. He then rode on his warhorse and went straight to the king's mansion. The sound of gunfire could be heard throughout the city. Zhu Huaiqiu, who was in the king's mansion, was naturally no exception. At this moment, he was pacing back and forth in the main hall of the 5 prefectures. Although he hadn't received the relevant battle report yet, from the dense gunfire, he had a feeling that the situation wasn't very favorable. Wang Zhanjiang came and immediately stood in front of Zhu Huaiqiu and reported the battle situation. Hearing this, the expression of the 3 provincial kings changed again and again. After a while, his face darkened. You're saying that the black cavalry has enough ammunition and they don't have any intention of stopping shooting? Yes. Wang Zhanjiang lowered his head. After sensing the king's anger, he didn't even dare to raise his head. How is this possible? Zhu Huaiqiu said in disbelief. After anxiously pacing back and forth a few steps, he asked loudly, "When they entered the city, didn't you all see it? Did they bring any carriages?" No. Wang Zhanjiang lowered his head and answered honestly. Since they didn't bring any carriages with them, how much ammunition could they bring with them? How is it possible that they can't finish shooting? Could it be that the soldiers below are too afraid of death and can't charge properly? Zhu Huaiqiu couldn't understand and wanted to put all the blame on the soldiers' morale. No, Your Majesty, the soldiers are already putting their lives on the line. Out of the 5,000 soldiers, I have prepared a team of 500 soldiers. Once they are found to be cowardly and not daring to charge, they will be punished according to military law. Wang Zhanjiang naturally tried his best to explain. He didn't want to be punished because of this and be punished by the king. Zhu Huaiqiu still trusted Wang Zhanjiang. Otherwise, he wouldn't have entrusted him with such an important task. However, it was because of this that he couldn't figure out the reason. Now that Wang Zhanjiang was standing in front of him, he suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and asked, "General Wang, why are you here?" "Your Majesty, I'm here to ask for reinforcements. I only have less than 2,000 soldiers. The 500 black cavalry should be unharmed. Under such circumstances, we don't have the ability to launch an attack, so, approved. Take this king's tiger tally and I'll give you 10,000 soldiers. General Wang, everything depends on you. Capture Yang Chendong alive, and you will be the greatest contributor. Do you understand? Zhu Huiqiu didn't wait for Wang Zhanjiang to finish speaking and nodded in agreement. In order to capture Yang Chendong alive, it would be worth it even if he had to use all 50,000 soldiers in the city. Hearing that there were 10,000 reinforcements, Wang Zhanjiang was naturally overjoyed. He immediately said with a solemn expression, "Thank you for your support, Your Majesty." "Don't worry, Your Majesty. With these 10,000 soldiers, I'm 80% more confident that we can capture Yang Chendong alive. Then this prince will wait for the good news from General Wang." "Oh right. Remember, you must stop the attack after daybreak," Zhu Huiqiu reminded him. The situation in the city wasn't very stable. When they attacked in the dark, the civilians couldn't see what was going on. They could only be suspicious, which was easy to deal with. However, once they attacked in the day, who knew what the civilians would do? The situation hadn't reached the most critical point yet, so there was no need to take the risk of attacking in the day. Wang Zhanjiang quickly nodded in agreement. He naturally understood this logic. During the day, he was the one who had led the soldiers to persuade the 5,000 civilians to return. How could he not know that if they attacked in the day and the civilians reacted, wouldn't the situation become even more chaotic? Wang Zhanjiang took the Tiger Troop talisman and left. 2 hours later, at midnight, he brought 10,000 soldiers to the courtyard. With the arrival of so many soldiers, the streets near the courtyard were quickly filled with soldiers. With so many reinforcements in hand, Wang Zhanjiang's confidence was greatly boosted. With a wave of his hand, he sent out 2,000 soldiers and once again launched a fierce attack on the courtyard. Gunshots sounded once again, from sporadic to concentrated, indicating the intensity of the battle. A few hundred steps away in the courtyard, Yang Chendong wasn't sleeping. Instead, he stood in the courtyard and looked up at the bright moon hanging high in the sky. It was the 14th day of the lunar calendar. The moon in the sky was very bright, but Yang Chendong's heart was a little heavy. The moment Zhu Huiqiu began to turn hostile, Wang Shan had already sent a message to the main force of the 5-star army waiting in Langsun. Presumably, they had already set off. A total of more than 200,000 soldiers should have already entered the 3 provinces. With the speed of the 1st Cavalry Army and the new army's cavalry, they should be able to reach Yunnan Manor in 3 days. At that time, there would be a lot of fighting and killing. When he thought about how many Han people would die in this battle, Yang Chendong's mood was not good. The reason why Yang Chendong had conquered the surrounding areas of the Great Ming Dynasty was because he wanted to take over this place with the smallest price. After all, the people who had lived here for generations were all Han people. The death of any one of them would be a loss to the Han people. If he wanted to bring the Han people to the peak of the world, he needed to have a certain proportion of Han people. Only then would he be considered the king of the world. Originally, he thought that after conquering the surrounding areas and showing enough strength, the Great Ming Dynasty would be afraid of him. At that time, he would only need to pay a small price to peacefully take over this place, allowing more Han people to live better lives and obtain the greatest respect. Chapter 1569. However, he did not expect the Great Ming Dynasty to be so courageous. It could also be said that the 2 emperors of the Great Ming Dynasty were people who would not shed tears until they saw the coffin. They were not frightened by the strength of the 5-star army and even wanted to struggle. Since that was the case, Yang Chendong would not go easy on them. Taking care of the 3 provincial kings first was to make an example out of them. No matter what, Zhu Huiqiu was still a descendant of the Zhu family. Although he killed his brother, it did not change the fact that he was a member of the Zhu family. Yang Chendong only hoped that after taking care of Zhu Huiqiu with an iron fist, Zhu Qizhen and Zhu Qiyu could see the difference between them and finally surrender peacefully. Looking at the bright moon, Yang Chendong stood with his hands behind his back. His whole person was enveloped by the moon. The 3 provincial armies' attack was still ongoing. They had the idea of using manpower to consume firearms and ammunition. Wave after wave of attacks did not stop. Ba Daojiang's team had already been replaced. After repelling 4 waves of enemy attacks, the soldiers were very tired. Firing guns for a long time was also a physical activity. It was normal for their arms to be numb and their hands to be weak. At 2:00 in the morning, Dao Xiao brought another 100 black cavalry to replace them. When dawn broke, the attack of the three provincial armies finally came to an end. The entire courtyard was filled with corpses, and there was even a tall pile of corpses. The stench was so strong that it could be smelled from miles away. It was really nauseating. Outside the courtyard, Wang Zhanjiang was pinching his nose as he ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. Below the courtyard wall, countless corpses were piled up. They were all the soldiers of the three provincial armies who had died last night. Looking at the corpses, Wang Zhanjiang's face was bitter. His legs were a little numb. In just one night, out of the 15,000 soldiers from the three provinces, more than 12,000 of them had died. This was because he had intentionally slowed down his attack speed in the later stages of the battle. Otherwise, he was afraid that not a single one of the remaining 2,000 or so people would have survived. 15,000 against 500. With a ratio of 30-1, Wang Zhanjiang's side actually lost 5/6 of their soldiers. Not to mention that Wang Zhanjiang had never fought such a war before. He had never even heard of it. He did not know how to face Zhu Huichen and explain to the king. Clean up the battlefield. Make sure to clean up the corpses. At the same time, stay far away from the courtyard. Give the enemy enough time to clean up the battlefield. After giving this order to the soldiers below, Wang Zhanjiang urged his horse to head towards the three provinces. Not long after Wang Zhanjiang left, a raging fire also ignited in the small courtyard. The number of soldiers in the black cavalry was limited. Naturally, they could not bury all the enemy corpses that had charged into their ranks. Considering that the weather was starting to heat up, they were afraid that the corpses would attract a plague. After reporting to Yang Chendong, the soldiers used a large fire to solve the problem. They burned all the enemy corpses with cremation. The smell of the burning corpses was quite unpleasant. When a breeze blew, the air in the entire southern cloud manor changed. Therefore, no matter whether it was near or far from the small courtyard, the people in the city all knew that someone had attacked the small courtyard where Bugnam of Gojoseon lived last night. Immediately, for their own safety, many people walked onto the streets and asked for help from the three provinces. Zhu Huichen had expected the people's actions. In the morning, he sent another general, Kai Wanju, to lead 5,000 soldiers to tightly seal off the main streets near the three provinces to prevent anyone from disturbing him. As for himself, he summoned Chen Tian, Meng Neng, Wu Yingtu, and Mo Gue, and General Wang Zhanjiang, who had just arrived to report. His right-hand men all arrived. The servants of the manor served tea and snacks. Everyone sat together to discuss the next step. Just as everyone's attention was on Wang Zhanjiang's report, the servants left one by one. One of the stewards first went to the servants' room to say goodbye, saying that he was going out to buy some things. Then, he walked out of the manor openly. This steward's name was Zhu Changjiu. He had been with Zhu Huichen for more than 10 years. He was definitely an old man. This could be seen from the fact that he was given the surname Zhu. He also enjoyed a certain amount of power in the manor. For someone like this, his every move would not be suspected. However, this Zhu Changjiu had actually been bribed by Yang San. Yes, bribed. In order to get in touch with this person, the intelligence department spent a lot of effort. Yang San specially appointed a group of 7 people to get in touch with this person and related matters. For the sake of confidentiality, this group of 7 people was directly led by Yang San. In the entire Yangxia, other than Yang San, only Yang Chenong knew about this matter. However, he only knew about the existence of this group. As for who the specific members were and who they were in contact with, Yang Chendong did not know. This operation could be said to have reached the highest level of security in order to prevent information from leaking out. In the situation of knowing that there was a traitor, but not knowing who it was, Yang Chendong could not completely trust anyone. It was such a small group that did a lot of work for Zhu Changjiu. They investigated everything related to this person's life. It was not easy to find out that before this person came to Zhu Huichen, he had a sister who was 3 years younger than him. At that time, because the family was hit by a flood, the two were separated during the escape. There was no news for a long time. When this news was seen by Bureau Chief Yang San, he felt that there was a lot to be done. At that moment, He put in a lot of effort and mobilized a lot of manpower and material resources to investigate this matter. His hard work paid off, and he really did manage to find out. Coincidentally, this woman was still alive, and she even came to Crimson City by accident. Now, she was already married, and she was a middle-level leader in the textile factory. After hearing this news, Yang San was overjoyed. He brought all the information and paintings about this woman, which was Wang Ling, to Yunnan Manor. Under the arrangement of the 7 small secret group, he met with Zhu Changjiu, this person whose original name should be Wang Chong. When Zhu Changjiu was blocked by Yang San in an alley, he instinctively wanted to shout. Based on his familiarity with the surrounding environment, he knew that there was a street 30 steps behind him. There must be soldiers patrolling on the street. His shout was likely to attract their attention. Just when Zhu Changjiu wanted to shout, Yang San handed over the paintings in his hand. There were a total of 4 paintings. One of them was Wang Ling's current appearance, another was a painting of his parents together in his memory, another was a painting of her and her brother, who was Zhu Changjiu, playing by the river in front of the courtyard when they were young, and the last one was a painting of Zhu Changjiu before they separated. Wang Ling was now a middle-level leader in the textile factory. Her husband's family was an ordinary leader in the city lord's residence. She also gave birth to 3 cute children, and they were all studying in Yang Xie's school. It could be said that she had received a lot of favors from Yang Chendong. Now that there was something that needed her help, she would do her best to help. When the 4 paintings appeared in front of Zhu Changjiu, the door of his dusty memory was opened. For a moment, he shut his mouth. Just like this, Zhu Changjiu, who didn't resist, had a long chat with Yang San in a secret and safe place. When he found out that his sister was living well and had given birth to 2 little nephews and a niece for him, Zhu Changjiu cried tears of joy. All these years, it wasn't that he didn't think of looking for his sister. This matter had even alarmed Zhu Huiyun. He had sent people to look for her, but there had been no news. Over time, everyone thought that this woman must have died and was no longer in this world. But happiness came so suddenly. Tell me, what do you need me to do? Zhu Changjiu was also a smart person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been recognized by Zhu Huiyun. He looked at Yang San and asked in a deep voice. Outsiders didn't know what the 2 of them talked about. Anyway, after Zhu Changjiu left the house, he became Yang San's spy. His main task was to find out what other forces were secretly in contact with Zhu Huiyun other than the subordinates of the 3 provincial kings. Regarding this matter, Zhu Changjiu felt somewhat guilty. After all, Zhu Huiyun had treated him well. But when he thought of Yang San's promise that not only could his sister live a better life in Qiqin City, but after the matter in Yunnan, he could also go to Qiqin City to reunite with his sister. In the end, his emotions won over his rationality. Moreover, he only wanted to find that mysterious person, not to do anything to Zhu Huiyun. After thinking this through, Zhu Changjiu accepted this task. Today, he left the mansion to report to Yang San. This was the first time he saw Mo Gue in the main hall. Judging from everyone's reaction, this should be the person Yang San was talking about. In the past, Mo Gue had been hiding in the 3 provincial kings' mansions. Because he lived in a place where outsiders couldn't get close, Zhu Changjiu didn't know. Yang San spent a lot of effort but still couldn't get any news. But now, perhaps because Yang Chendong was surrounded in the courtyard, everyone thought that he couldn't escape. So, they didn't hide Mo Gue and let him come out to meet everyone. Even so, if it weren't for the spies in the king's mansion, it would be impossible to find out about this person's appearance. In the king's mansion, Zhu Huiyun didn't know that Mo Gue had been exposed. He was listening to Wang Zhanjiang's report of last night's battle. When they heard that after a night of fighting, after launching more than 10 attacks and losing more than 12,000 men, they still couldn't break through the defense lines set up by the Black Cavalry Dragon Guards, everyone present fell silent. Obviously, the reality was different from what they had expected. The Black Cavalry Dragon Guards were not as limited as they had imagined. On the contrary, they should have had plenty of gunpowder. Chapter 1570. As for how the Black Cavalry did this, it was a mystery that everyone couldn't figure out. The most important question now wasn't to find the answer, but what to do next. Although the transmission of information was too slow and it was impossible to know if the news had already spread, From the information provided by Mogue, Yang Chendong might have already made his move. That man had a telegraph. According to Mogue, that thing could transmit messages from thousands of miles away or even further away. Last night's attack had already made their position clear. The negotiation was completely fake. Their real goal was to capture Yang Chendong alive. With Yang Chendong's intelligence, he probably already had his suspicions. Last night's attack proved everything. In that case, the five-star army would most likely make their move. There wasn't much time left for the three provincial armies. Everyone at the meeting knew that if they fought head-on, they definitely wouldn't be a match for the five-star army. This had been proven by countless countries and factions that had been destroyed. In that case, other than capturing Yang Chendong, they had no other choice. We must capture Yang Chendong. Zhu Huichen suddenly stood up with a ferocious expression. Then, as if he had made a decision, he spat out 4 words, regardless of life or death. Finally, Zhu Huichen didn't dare to wait any longer. If he couldn't capture Yang Chendong within the time limit, once the main force of the five-star army arrived outside Yunnan Manor, he wouldn't have a chance to make his move. On the other hand, as long as Yang Chendong died, even if he didn't capture him alive, as long as he could leave Yunnan Manor before the main force of the five-star army arrived, he would effectively avoid the first attack. Then, there would be internal strife in Yangxie. When they split apart, it would be time for him to make his move. Zhu Huichen finally made his final decision. This made Mogue, who was sitting on the side like a guest, feel joy in his heart. The task given to him by his master was to kill Yang Chendong, not to capture him alive. Unfortunately, Zhu Huichen didn't listen to him on this matter, so he could only watch from the side. Now that both sides had the same goal, he could do whatever he wanted. It should be time to do something. Mogue had just made up his mind when Zhu Huihua looked at him. Mr. Mo, I've decided to kill Yang Chendong. Shouldn't you do something? Of course. Mogue nodded with a smile. Congratulations, Your Highness. You've made the right decision. If you want to capture Yang Chendong alive, it is indeed somewhat difficult, but if you want to kill Wu Nanwang who is hiding in the small courtyard, it is not very difficult. What do you mean, Mr. Mo? Zhu Huichen asked expectantly. He already knew that Mogue's master wanted Yang Chendong dead, but he wanted to gain more benefits, so he didn't make up his mind. Now that they had the same idea, he believed that Mogue would do something to help him. Your Highness, my master has just sent a batch of cannons. They are in a workshop in the east of Yunnan Prefecture. I'll have to trouble General Wang to make a trip there. Mogue was still smiling as he told Zhu Huichen the answer he wanted. What did he mean by just sent a batch of cannons? Only an idiot would believe that. Although the current southern cloud manor wasn't heavily guarded, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens to send something as large as a cannon into the city without anyone's knowledge. This could only mean that the cannons were already in the city, but Mogue's master wasn't satisfied with Zhu Huichen's idea, so he didn't reveal his trump card. Zhu Huichen quickly figured out the crux of the matter, but he still pretended to be happy and laughed. Good. Mr. Mo's cannons are just in time. General Wang, go to the east of the city immediately and move the cannons outside the courtyard. Tonight will be the night Yang Chendong dies. Yes, sir. Wang Zhanjiang stood up with excitement on his face. He had been worried about what to do at night. Looking at the black cavalry, as long as they didn't lack ammunition, it would take a lot of soldiers to charge in. But with the cannons, things were different. With the cannons, they could ignore the enemy's firearms. The courtyard wasn't that big, so they could just bombard it. Then, he could eliminate the black cavalry without touching a single hair of the enemy. With a face full of joy, Wang Zhanjiang accepted the order and left. Not long after, he arrived at the workshop in the east of the city that Mogue mentioned. He found 10 cannons and 300 rounds of ammunition in the courtyard. Whether it was the number of cannons or the number of cannons, Wang Zhanjiang was overjoyed. They had wanted to stockpile cannons before, but the southern Ming Empire had imposed a blockade on them, and the five-star army didn't have any intention of selling cannons, so they could only wait. Now that they finally had the cannons, General Wang felt that his body was full of energy. The cannons were found and transported from the east of the city to Yang Chendong's courtyard in the west of the city. The news quickly reached Yang San's ears. The spies he had hidden in the 3 provinces' armies were finally useful. The news was also sent to Yang Chandong through the radio. Sixth young master, urgent call. Telecommunications director Wang Shan nervously sent the newly copied telegram to Yang Chandong. Don't panic, the sky won't collapse. Yang Chandong said confidently. He reached out and took the telegram. When he read the contents clearly, his eyebrows couldn't help but raise high. Then, he fell into deep thought. There were no cannons in the three provinces' armies. The only ones that had been used to attack Beijiang Prefecture had all been blown up. This could be seen from the previous intelligence department in various reports. This was also one of the reasons why Yang Chandong dared to enter the city with only 500 black cavalry soldiers. However, the other party now had 30 cannons and 300 rounds of ammunition, which made the situation serious. This didn't mean that Yang Chandong was afraid of these artillery shells. These days, Beta Persei didn't participate in the battle and command the battle. Instead, he led the 300 black cavalry soldiers to continuously dig tunnels. Wasn't it to prevent such a thing from happening? Yang Chandong was now thinking about the source of these cannons. Yang San had made it very clear in the telegram that these cannons were not the field cannons of the Five-Star Army, but the red coat cannons created by the Southern Ming dynasty. In recent years, due to the emergence of the Five-Star Army's firearms, both Ming and the Southern Ming dynasty had been forced to invest a lot of resources in the research of cannons. Now, they both had a large number of cannons, but due to the lack of technology, most of these cannons were solid shells, and the range was very limited. Not to mention the power of the cannons, or whether Yang Chandong had prepared for it, the source of these cannons alone was enough to make one ponder over it carefully. Did the Southern Ming dynasty support the three provinces' armies to kill him? Or did the traitor help Zhu Huiming get them? If it was the former, it would be fine. After dealing with the three provinces' armies, he could use this as an excuse to start a war with the Southern Ming dynasty. However, if it was the latter, then the identity of the traitor was somewhat interesting. The traitor understood the situation in the Yangxia dynasty very well, could speak with the Southern Ming dynasty, and could even obtain such an important weapon like the cannons. Who could this traitor be? For some reason, with the appearance of these cannons, Yang Chandong had a feeling that he could confirm the identity of the traitor one step closer. He could see who in the Yangxia dynasty had contact with the Southern Ming dynasty and then identify them one by one. The 30 cannons were pushed out of the small courtyard, and Wang Zhanjiang was only waiting for the sky to turn dark. In order to ensure the success of tonight's operation, Zhu Huiming gave another 10,000 soldiers to Wang Zhanjiang, which made him more confident. Zhu Huiming was also very nervous as he waited for the good news to arrive in the palace. While he was waiting, the sky turned dark as promised. When the curfew arrived and there were no civilians on the streets, Wang Zhanjiang impatiently went in front of the cannons and gave the order to fire. There was no prelude, no warning. The moment the cannons came, it was to give the 500 black cavalry in the small courtyard a head-on blow. The attack last night caused Wang Zhanjiang's losses to be too great. With this hatred, he was determined to uproot Bugnam of Gojoseon. Boom, boom, boom. Under the irregular cannon fire, the outer walls of the 4 courtyards and the 3 courtyards quickly collapsed. The solid metal cannons wreaked havoc in the small courtyards as if there was no one there. It was as if they were the boss and those who blocked them would die. Originally, the 3 provincial armies did not have any artillery units, and there was no real standard for how to use these cannons. As a result, the cannons that were fired could fly anywhere. This was also why the attack this time was so powerful. After a few waves of attack, the outer walls of the 2 courtyards collapsed. Many houses were also knocked down by the cannons, causing rumbling sounds of the walls collapsing. Smoke and dust rose into the sky. Even though it was the 15th day of the lunar calendar and the moonlight was very bright, people's vision was still very limited. Looking at this rather spectacular scene, Wang Zhanjiang's heart was filled with pride. He could not wait to see the scene of the Black Knight Dragon Guards being crushed by him. Without the help of firearms, his 10,000 men would only be able to deal with a few hundred Black Knight Dragon Guards. He was confident that he could achieve victory. Each cannon fired a total of 5 cannons, and half of the solid metal cannons were wasted just like that. It also cleared a wide enough space for attack. Wang Zhanjiang immediately stopped the cannons from firing. Then, with a loud shout, the infantry charged forward. Chapter 1571. If they hadn't received the news in advance, it would have been like last night. The Black Cavalry Dragon Guards would have set up a firepower net and blockade outside. In the face of this sudden solid bullet attack, they would have suffered heavy losses. It wasn't impossible for them to lose their defensive line tonight. However, after receiving the news a step earlier, everything was a different picture. Long before the sky turned dark, most of the Black Cavalry had already hidden in the tunnel that Beta Persei had dug. This kind of tunnel was similar to the bomb shelters of the future. Even if it was a burst of fire, it could block it, not to mention a solid bullet. It could not hurt the people hiding here at all. Most of the Black Cavalry were hiding. Only less than 50 Black Cavalry were sent outside. They hid in various houses and used the solid walls to observe the movements outside. This was also to prevent the enemy from launching an attack, so that they could be the first to stop them. It was worth mentioning that these Black Cavalry were no longer holding Type 95 in their hands. Instead, each of them had a rocket launcher. The rocket launcher could easily hit more than 100 steps away. It made them look like they were holding a small mobile cannon with great power. When the cannons of the 3 provincial armies began to fire, the 50 Black Knight Dragon Guards were hiding in the small houses. Although more than 100 solid shells were fired and caused some damage, there were no casualties among the 50 Black Knight Dragon Guards as they were covered by the strong walls. Only 2 of the soldiers were choked by the smoke and couldn't stop coughing. Then, the assault of the 3 provinces began. The 50 of them immediately fired their rockets, and when the cannons landed in the midst of the enemy camp, the shockwaves from the explosion killed, injured, and scattered the Black Shadows. When the rocket launcher sounded outside, it was equivalent to giving the Black Cavalry hiding in the bomb shelter the order to charge and counterattack. Everyone came out of the tunnel in a line, each holding a Type 95 or a light machine gun. They found the predetermined position to counterattack and began to madly fire and counterattack. The sound of cannons and concentrated gunfire was constantly heard, giving the charging soldiers of the 3 provinces a head-on blow. Completely unprepared, they were caught off guard. Just the thousands of soldiers from the 3 provinces who were charging at the front were wiped out in a single exchange. Not a single one of them survived. The Black Cavalry's methods and enhanced firepower really frightened the soldiers of the 3 provinces. They could not help but stop in their tracks. Then, without waiting for orders, they frantically retreated. After a round of bombardment and a round of charge, they had suffered more than 1,000 casualties. When this result was reported to Wang Zhanjiang, it made him even angrier. His face also revealed a crazy expression. Boom, continue to bombard them. Destroy all the houses. I want to see where they can hide. The wave of bombardment just now had already destroyed more than 1/3 of the houses in the 2 courtyards. This allowed the soldiers of the 3 provinces to charge more than 10 steps without any threat. Wang Zhanjiang wanted to use the same method to continue to charge forward, slowly nibbling away the space for the Black Cavalry to survive, and finally gain the initiative of the battle. The cannons were pushed forward again. Each of the 30 cannons fired 2 shells, which meant 60 solid shells rolled in front of the houses. Without the obstruction of the courtyard walls, more than 10 houses were destroyed. This time, the Black Cavalry did not have a record of 0 casualties. 2 soldiers were injured, and 1 soldier's injury was not too light. Fire at the enemy's cannons, blow them up. Looking at the rocket launcher, Beta Persei roared in anger. The Black Cavalry were his good brothers, and Beta Persei knew every one of them by name. Now that his brothers were injured, as the actual commander of the Black Cavalry, how could he not be angry? The Black Knight Dragon Guards, who were also enraged, fired their rocket launchers. They had been waiting for this order. In an instant, several people rushed forward. Under the moonlight, they came within 80 steps of the 30 cannons. Then, they angrily fired their rockets and smashed into the cannons, causing a series of loud sounds of metal colliding. The sudden bombardment directly destroyed several cannons, and even some of the soldiers standing in front of the cannons were blasted into the air by the powerful explosion. When they fell to the ground, they were already dead. Good job, continue. Seeing that there was an effect, Beta Persei continued to shout excitedly. Several more rocket launchers were fired, and the cannons were destroyed one after another. Wang Zhanjiang saw all this, and it made his heart ache. He only had a total of 30 cannons. This was all he had, and it was also all the property of the king of the 3 provinces. If all these were wasted here, he was afraid that he would not be able to explain it to the king. Therefore, with a pained expression on his face, he ordered his men to continue to charge forward, looking for the black cavalry's gunner, and at the same time, distracting the enemy. Then he led his men to move the cannons back, saving the remaining 12 cannons and the 60 shells that were not destroyed. The black cavalry's full-scale counterattack was effective. They defeated the arrogance of the 3 provinces and took back some territory. But after all, it was a fact that so many houses were destroyed. After waiting for less than half an hour, the third charge organized by Wang Zhanjiang began. When the soldiers of the 3 provinces came from all directions, the pressure on the black cavalry multiplied. When there were enemies on all sides, it was not as easy as before to block the enemy outside the position. The sound of the light and heavy machine guns was much more intense than last night. Beta Persei led the 200 black cavalry who were originally digging the tunnel to join the battle, and only then did they manage to stabilize the situation. Under the moonlight, the sparks from the bullets could be seen everywhere. The soldiers of the 3 provinces who rushed from all directions fell one after another, but then they rushed up one after another. At this point in the battle, human lives were the most worthless. At this time, everyone seemed to be red-eyed. Other than shooting, they were charging, and they looked like they would not stop until they fought to the death. Yang Chendong was also standing in the tunnel at this moment. Beside him, Telecommunications Director Wang Shan looked at him expectantly, waiting for orders at any time. But after waiting for a long time, seeing that Yang Chendong did not give any orders, Wang Shan could only look up and down again. As Wang Shan expected, Yang Chendong did indeed have a backup plan in Yunnan manner. Once he mobilized this force, it would be very powerful. But he did not do that, not for anything else, but because he felt that things had not reached the final juncture yet. Just like how he had a backup plan, he had a feeling that his opponent also had a backup plan that had yet to be used. He was waiting, planning before moving. The attack was still going on, and the number of deaths was constantly increasing. General Wang Zhanjiang's face was already covered in cold sweat. Originally, he thought that with the help of the artillery, tonight's attack would be as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Even if he could not capture Yang Chendong alive, he could still kill him. But who would have thought that the other party was clearly prepared? After fighting for nearly 3 hours, there were less than 5,000 soldiers left in his hands. At this rate, he was afraid that when dawn came, not only would he not achieve the expected victory, but he would also not have any soldiers to use. In the past, he had always heard about how powerful the 5-star army was and how powerful their firearms were. But before he really saw it, he did not believe it in his heart. But after 2 consecutive nights of attack, he finally knew how powerful the opponent was. He also finally understood why so many forces and countries would be defeated and even destroyed when facing the 5-star army. Would the 3 provincial armies be wiped out as well? Once this thought appeared in his mind, he could not get rid of it. Wang Zhanjiang's face only became more unsightly. In the prince's mansion, Zhu Huixing was still waiting for the good news in the main hall. However, after sending out wave after wave of people and obtaining the current situation, his expression could no longer be as calm as before. When the sky began to slowly brighten, and the sound of roosters crowing could be heard in the city, he fell into a chair with a thump. He knew that another opportunity had passed in front of him just like that. The sky was already bright, and there was no turning back. Zhu Huixing had no choice but to give the order to retreat. He believed that he still had a chance. Before he lost all hope, he did not want the people to see this scene and cause a revolt. If that happened, who knew what would happen? Early in the morning, the generals came to the 3 provincial princes' mansion again. As usual, Wang Zhanjiang, whose eyes were bloodshot, was the first to give the report. Wang Zhanjiang, who had not rested for 2 consecutive days, felt tired both physically and mentally. But in front of the king, he could only force himself to give a detailed report of last night's battle. When he said that the 30 cannons were all destroyed by the 5-star army and that the soldiers suffered heavy losses in one night, the faces of the people in the meeting became very unsightly. The difference between reality and the plan was too big, so big that everyone could not accept it at the moment. Even though the gunshots rang out until dawn, everyone was mentally prepared for the attack to be unfavorable. But from Wang Zhanjiang's retelling, the result was worse than what they had expected. It seemed that the attack last night, other than destroying the outer walls of the two small courtyards and destroying some houses, did not hurt the black cavalry. Oh, maybe they were hurt, but they did not see it, so they did not calculate it. Everyone comforted themselves in this way. When Zhu Huixing looked at everyone, he gave a different opinion. It's already been 2 days, we don't have much time left. Everyone, what should we do next? There were only 500 opponents, and they were right under his nose, heavily surrounded. However, he just couldn't eat them. This feeling made Zhu Huiyun very unhappy. When he looked at the crowd and spoke, his tone was filled with impatience. Chapter 1572. That's right, Zhu Huihua was anxious. This was because in the morning, when the sun had just risen, the scouts had entered the city and reported that the main force of the 5-star army had begun to move towards the 3 provinces from Liang Mountain. The distance between Liang Mountain and Yunnan Manor was a few hundred li, but the news that came was that the cavalry of the 5-star army was coming on horseback. Who knew if they would suddenly appear in front of him? If he couldn't get rid of Yang Qindong before these people arrived, then it would really be troublesome. This time, he had invited Yang Qindong to negotiate, but now, he had to kill him. In terms of morality, he had already lost. If Yang Qindong didn't die, and the 5-star army arrived outside the city, then the one who would die would be him. Time was of the essence, and Zhu Huihua didn't have the time to think about other things. Right now, what he needed to do was to kill Yang Qindong. Only then would Yang Xie be in chaos, and he would be safe. Only then would he be able to obtain everything he wanted. Tonight, mobilize all the forces that can be mobilized. We must kill Yang Qindong. These words were squeezed out from between his teeth, and Zhu Huihua's expression became more and more ruthless. In this kind of game where it was either you die or I live, anyone could only use all their strength. After Zhu Huihua made his final decision, the entire army of the 3 provinces in Yunnan Manor began to move. In order to achieve the goal of exhausting the firearms and ammunition of the Black Cavalry, even the 10,000 new recruits were put to use. However, because they didn't have any combat experience, in order to prevent a large number of people from escaping when the battle started, they weren't placed on the main attack. Instead, they were responsible for the security of the outer perimeter. For 2 consecutive nights, the entire Yunnan Manor's commoners probably knew that Zhu Huihua wanted to kill Yang Qindong. No one knew what these commoners would do. Although these people were often seen as ants, no one could deny that once these commoners took action, they would cause a huge commotion and cause serious consequences. In order to prevent the civilians in the city from doing anything that would be detrimental to their operations, the 10,000 new soldiers that had just been recruited were put to use. Their main purpose was to protect the civilians in the city and prevent them from suddenly causing trouble. Rather than calling them new recruits, it would be more accurate to call them able-bodied men. These people were all captured from various places. They didn't want to join the army at first, but they were unlucky and were captured at the last minute. Among them, there were more than 3,000 able-bodied men captured near Mount Liang. However, everyone knew that more than half of these 3,000 people were cold front warriors. Moreover, they were under the command of Cheng Hu, the elite 1st Regiment of the 1st Regiment of the Cold Front. Back then, Cheng Hu had split up the Cold Front warriors and disguised them as local refugees. Furthermore, they had pretended that they were coincidentally found by the army of the 3 provinces. Just like that, they were captured as able-bodied men. Not only did they successfully enter Yunnan Manor without any checks, they were also stationed in the barracks in the city. Logically speaking, the army of the 3 provinces had a set of methods to manage the army. For example, after entering the barracks, they had to go through household registration and so on. With this set of procedures, it would be difficult for the Cold Front warriors to hide their target. Coincidentally, before the army could do anything, Yang Qindong arrived. This instantly attracted everyone's attention, and no one cared about the new recruits anymore. They also helped Cheng Hu's troops cover for him and stayed in the army. In the past 2 days, the news of Zhu Huihua wanting to kill Yang Qindong had already spread throughout the army. To the ordinary soldiers, This was simply a fight between gods. They only needed to follow orders. The main goal of the Yangtze had always been to let the Han people live better lives and let them become the rulers of this world. However, to the soldiers of the three provinces who were not Yangtze soldiers, they did not have the opportunity to experience this kind of glory. On the contrary, they had been receiving military pay from Zhu Huihua, the king of the three provinces. Naturally, they had been paid to do something. However, as 10,000 new recruits, they had not even received a single cent of military pay. This was naturally because they had only been here for a short period of time. However, this gave Cheng Hu and the others an opportunity to instigate a rebellion. If they were dealing with veteran soldiers, Cheng Hu and the others would have to think twice before doing anything. However, they did not have to be so careful when dealing with a bunch of new recruits who had been captured under the same fate. They could do many things boldly. Over the past 2 days, Cheng Hu and the others had been trying to instigate a rebellion. However, to be on the safe side, they did not reveal their identities. Instead, they used the identity of someone who had suffered a similar fate to build a relationship with the new recruits. For something like a grievance gathering, no other army in the Yangtze had done better than the Longfeng army. Within the Longfeng army, the 1st Division had done the best. For example, during their usual training, they had an assessment on how to gain the support of more strangers in the shortest time possible to strengthen their own forces. All of this was now put to good use. Under Cheng Hu's persuasion, more than 8,000 of the 10,000 new recruits were convinced. These people's hearts were already moved, and they were filled with all kinds of desires to become a part of the Yang faction's people. Under the propaganda of Cheng Hu and the others, the slogan of saving Bugnam of Gojoseon and making a contribution to the Yangtze army quickly spread to the people. When they found out that their 10,000 new recruits were also participating in the battle tonight, but were only responsible for the security of the outer perimeter, Cheng Hu was so happy that he almost jumped up. This was really a case of someone sending a pillow when you were sleepy. They were just worrying about how to get out of the military camp, and now the opportunity was right in front of them. When Cheng Hu heard the news, he immediately sent someone to contact the secret agents of the security bureau in the city to ask for the next step of the plan. After 2 nights of continuous attacks, especially when the 3 provincial armies even used 30 cannons, the head of the security bureau, Yang San, who was in charge of everything in the city, felt his scalp go numb when he heard this. This method of luring the snake out of its hole and winning the hearts of the people was a good method. However, they should not have let the young master take the risk. For this reason, Yang San had objected to it, but it did not work. Since this was the case, he could only do his best to ensure Yang Qindong's safety. 2 nights had passed, and the 3rd night was about to arrive. Seeing that the 3 provincial armies would launch a new round of attacks in a few hours, Yang San had already made a decision in his heart. He was going to take action, and the only thing he could do was to instigate the people in Southern Cloud Prefecture to launch an attack. Although he did not know how many people would die in this way, as long as he could protect the young master, everything would be worth it. At this time, Cheng Hu sent someone to contact him using a special method. When he found out that the 1st Regiment of the 1st Division of the Longfeng Division was in the city and had secretly joined the 3 provincial armies as a new recruit, Yang San's bloodshot eyes could not help but brighten up. He was so happy that he exclaimed, "The heavens are really helping me. The heavens are really helping me, Yang Xie." After exclaiming, Yang San immediately ordered the secret agents of the intelligence department in the city to move out and spread rumors in the city. The main thing was that if something happened to Bugnam of Gojoseon in the city, the entire Yunnan prefecture would be razed to the ground. If that really happened, no one in the city would be spared. If they could take action to support Bugnam of Gojoseon, they would be meritorious subjects. Those who made great contributions would be rewarded with silver and land in the future. Although the current Great Ming dynasty was far from being as strong as before, it still had a certain foundation. At the very least, the state of society had not reached a point of no return. There were still some honest officials and capable officials. If the Great Ming dynasty was really on the verge of collapse, all they needed to do was to say that they would welcome Bugnam of Gojoseon into the city, and the people in the city would be able to make use of them. In order to cooperate with the soldiers of the Longfeng Division, Yang San had used up all his trump cards. However, Zhu Huiqi did not know about this. Perhaps he had never cared about the people in the first place. In addition, an even greater danger was pressing down on him. In the great general's residence in Guizhou, Jiang Wuqing was currently meeting with a guest in the study. As the great general of Guizhou appointed by Zhu Huiqi, Jiang Wuqing's strength was not weak. With 100,000 soldiers in his hands, he was confident. Even he himself was tall and strong, with a dignified appearance. Jiang Wuqing was a forthright person. From time to time, one could hear him laughing loudly. As a result, he enjoyed an illustrious reputation in Guizhou. However, today, he could no longer laugh. This was because a familiar person had appeared in front of him. It was Yao Ingjun. As the Security Bureau's earliest spy, and one of the most successful ones, Yao Ingjun was born with good looks. People called him Pan and the Reincarnation. Using this advantage, he successfully won the favor of Princess Yongsheng, Zhu Lian. He was also able to transmit the situation here to the higher-ups of Yangxie. Everything came to an end after Zhu Huiying killed his brother. After Yao Ingjun received the information from the Security Bureau, he immediately took Princess Yongsheng away. He quickly formed a group of people and had been roaming around Guizhou. At that time, Yao Ingjun could have brought Princess Yongsheng back to Yangxie's territory. Based on the important information he had transmitted over the years, the rewards he received would be enough for him to use for the rest of his life. However, he did not do that. Instead, he continued to be with Princess Yongsheng and raised the banner of opposing Zhu Huiqi. Needless to say, Yao Ingjun's act had become real. He had really fallen in love with this princess. Because of this, Yang Chendong also made a promise. No matter when, as long as he didn't want to work anymore and wanted to leave with Princess Yongsheng, he would personally give them permission to find a safe place to live the life of a rich man. Chapter 1573. Those who had done intelligence work knew that it was easy to enter but difficult to leave. After doing intelligence work for a day, it would be difficult for someone who had spent their entire life in intelligence work to leave safely. As such, many people envied Yao Ingjun because of this matter. Feeling grateful for Yang Chendong's kindness, Yao Ingjun decided to do better work to repay his kindness. This time, taking the initiative to meet Jiang Wuqing was a risky move by Yao Ingjun to repay his kindness. When Zhu Huiyun was still alive, Yao Ingjun knew Jiang Wuqing, but they did not have much interaction at that time. As such, when he appeared alone in the Jiang residence, Jiang Wuqing was shocked. Considering that Bugnam of Gojoseon had already entered the Yunnan residence, and now that Yao Ingjun had taken the initiative to appear in front of him, Jiang Wuqing instantly thought of many things. "Come in with me." Jiang Wuqing didn't immediately call for his bodyguards to arrest them. He spoke with a very calm tone. He believed that since the other party had come, it would be in his hands and could be seized at any time. Since that was the case, there was no need to be anxious. It would be better to see what he had to say. Yao Ingjun understood Jiang Wuqing's behavior very well. He had done a lot of homework and fully understood the nature of this Guizhou general, which was why he dared to take the risk alone. Hearing this greeting, he immediately chuckled, cupped his fists, and strode into the residence's inner room. The study was extremely quiet. As the host, Jiang Wuqing boldly sat down on the main seat and placed his sword on the table. His intention was self-evident. If Yao Ingjun could not convince him and give him a reasonable reason, he would probably use force. In response, Yao Ingjun only smiled and found a place to sit down. He then said, "General, do you know that a great disaster is imminent?" Jiang Wuqing's surprise at Yao Ingjun's shocking words disappeared in an instant. He then laughed coldly and said, "What? Is that all you have to say?" Negotiators from ancient times to modern times would often say shocking words in order to put enough pressure on the other party and fight for enough action. Jiang Wuqing had read a lot and had seen things like this before, so he wasn't surprised. Jiang Wuqing's performance fell into Yao Ingjun's eyes. He sighed in his heart at this person's calmness and calmness. Then he said, "General, this one is not speaking arrogantly, but this is the truth. Bugnam of Gojoseon was wise and mighty. In just a dozen years, he had conquered and occupied several territories the size of the great Ming dynasty. He had more than 1,000,000 troops under his command, and more than 10 million people under his rule. Wherever Bugnam of Gojoseon went, His enemies were either killed or beheaded. Even if he surrendered at the mere sight of the wind, in order to preserve his life, who could be his opponent? When Jiang Wuqing heard the praises, he did not have any intention of objecting. All of this was the truth. It was placed right in front of them, and they had no choice but to accept it. On this point, even Jiang Wuqing had some admiration in his heart. After praising Yang Qindong, Yao Yingjun continued, "Today, my lord has come to Yunnan Manor. Presumably, I don't need to say more about what will happen next. General, you should know what will happen, right?" Faced with this question, Jiang Wuqing knew that he had to say something, so he said, "Brother Yao, you flatter me. As far as this general knows, my lord has already laid an inescapable net in Yunnan Manor, and Bugnam of Gojoseon only brought 500 followers into the city. Now that 2 days have passed, I'm afraid that Bugnam of Gojoseon is now under my lord's control." Jiang Wuqing only received the news that Yang Qindong had entered Yunnan Manor this morning. At that time, he was indeed shocked by Yang Qindong's spirit of risking his life alone, but at the same time, he was extremely impressed. Although Jiang Wuqing did not mention it to anyone else, he knew very well that this time, Yang Qindong appeared in Yunnan Manor and made such a risky move in order to save the people of the 3 provinces from the suffering of war. Unfortunately, Jiang Wuqing knew his master very well. This was a master who would kill his own brother without hesitation. Such a person only had interests in his eyes, so how could he be honest? He could not understand. If he could see this point, then the wise Bugnam of Gojoseon should also be able to see it. But why did he still risk his life? Just as he was wondering in his heart, Yao Yingjun arrived. A sense of curiosity arose in his heart. He wanted to see what Yao Yingjun thought about this matter and what he had to say. How could Jiang Wuqing know that it was precisely because he had just received the news from Yunnan Manor that Yao Yingjun appeared in order to force the other party to make a statement at the first moment? After all, Jiang Wuqing was a very magnanimous person who treated the people well. He was considered a good official, so it was better to try to win over such a person if he could. Ha ha ha. When Yao Yingjun heard this, he threw his head back and laughed heartily. Just as Jiang Wuqing was confused and somewhat confused, he suddenly stopped and said, "What's wrong? General, do you think that you can keep my master with the means of the 3 provincial kings? To be honest, since my master dared to enter Yunnan Manor, he naturally made all kinds of preparations. How could he be easily controlled by others? If he did not have such means, how could he have today's achievements?" Jiang Wuqing still believed Yao Yingjun's words from the bottom of his heart. He also did not believe that Yang Qindong, who had always been invincible, would take such a risk. However, he just could not think of any way to break out of this situation. Out of curiosity, he could not help but ask, "Oh, but what means does Bugnam of Gojoseon have?" Haha. Shaking his head, Yao Yingjun did not answer this question. In fact, he himself did not know what means Yang Qindong had left behind. If he did not know the reason, how could he solve other people's doubts? Yao Yingjun, who did not answer this question, only said, "General, just wait for the result." But then he mentioned the purpose of his visit, which was to persuade Jiang Wuqing to surrender. "General, since my master has come to Yunnan Manor, presumably there will be a result soon. And I can say with certainty that the final loser will be Zhu Huihua. Then, may I ask, once the 3 provincial kings are captured, what will the general do?" After saying these words, Yao Yingjun kept staring at Jiang Wuqing's eyes, as if he wanted to find the answer he wanted. What to do? This was what Jiang Wuqing needed to consider. The great Ming dynasty's system valued the civil and despised the military. It was destined that the social status of the military would not be too high. For example, if a scholar made a mistake, he would often be held high and let go lightly. This was because behind him were his schoolmates, fellow townsmen, peers, and colleagues. Even if he made a mistake one day and left a way out, they would all stand up and speak up. On the other hand, if a military general made a mistake, he would often be thrown into a bottomless abyss. It was even possible to go down to the 18 layers of hell. This was especially true for those civil officials. In order to suppress the status and development of military generals, they would spare no effort in using all their strength. This was also the reason why military generals received far less treatment and reputation compared to civil officials, even though they were both subjects. Zhang Wuqing was born a military general. In the past, he did not know how many military generals and ancestors were played in the palms of the civil officials, and even had their families destroyed. Among these people, some really did make mistakes, and some were directly wrong because they offended someone. And even if they really did make some mistakes, should they be punished? Also, should the families of these military generals be so heavily implicated? At best, they would be exiled and made into slaves. At worst, they would be killed. However, because the right to speak was in the hands of the civil officials, even if some military generals had different ideas, they could only endure it in their hearts. Therefore, even though they were both officials, a military general was much more cautious than a civil official. And now, Yao Yingjun was asking him what to do, which made it difficult for Zhang Wuqing. He was indeed promoted by Zhu Huihua. Before this, he was only a chiliarch. Now, he could command 50,000 soldiers and become the general of a province. With this kindness, he indeed had to thank Zhu Huihua. But of all things, Zhu Huihua should not have provoked Bugnam of Gojoseon. Who was that person? He was an existence that could easily destroy grassland wolves. How could their local army compare to such a person? Even if Bugnam of Gojoseon entered Yunnan Manor and something happened. But what about the other people in Yangxie? Would they take revenge? Moreover, he had already heard that Bugnam of Gojoseon had appointed a prince, which was his successor. Would they really collapse? Taking a step back, if Bugnam of Gojoseon's Yangxie collapsed, what good would it do to him? Based on the fact that he had once served Zhu Huihua, not only would Yangxie's people not forgive him, but the civil officials in the southern Ming dynasty would also not let him off easily. If he was lucky, he would be dismissed. If he was unlucky, then he and his family would die. Thinking of his 4 children, the youngest of whom was only 4 years old, how could Zhang Wuqing bear to see them die because of him? For some reason, Zhang Wuqing's heart was filled with a sense of desolation at this moment. When he thought that because of him, his family would be implicated and die, he felt a burst of anger in his chest that wanted to erupt. It made him feel a burst of air, and his heart beat rapidly. Zhang Wuqing's heart could be said to be filled with complex feelings, and all of this fell clearly into Yao Yingjun's eyes. He felt that things could be done, so he laughed and said, "General, I don't think I need to say more about your situation. This time, the 3 provincial kings want to be enemies with my master, so they are destined to have a miserable end. How could such an unwise person be worthy of you working your life for him? Why don't you turn back now?" Bugnam of Gojoseon said that as long as General is willing to surrender, not only will he not make any mistakes, but he will also give you merit. Even if we are all Han, he will give you wealth and ensure the safety of General and your family. Chapter 1574. These words were just right, and they also touched Zhang Wuqing's heart, causing him to be moved. However, considering that he had once received Zhu Huilio's kindness, would it be too unjust to do so? Also, how trustworthy was Yao Yingjun's words? Zhang Wuqing had already opened his mouth to agree, but he closed it tightly again. There was no such thing as betrayal in this world. The only reason there was no betrayal was because the bargaining chip was not high enough. Or perhaps the threat was not high enough. If Yao Yingjun had not found him before, Zhang Wuqing might have had a choice and could have chosen the right time. However, now that Yao Yingjun had found him, he could only make a choice. He could either agree or not. Could he not agree? No one was willing to surrender. However, how could Zhang Wuqing, with a mere 50,000 soldiers, stop the 5-star army's might? Furthermore, the 50,000 soldiers under him belonged to the local army. In the end, their combat strength was only average. With such an army, Zhang Wuqing had already lost the confidence to fight against the experienced 5-star army before the battle even started. Whether it was because he had seen the situation clearly or because his strength was not enough, Zhang Wuqing had no choice but to make a decision. He looked at Yao Yingjun and asked, "But I don't know. If I choose to surrender to the 5-star army, what kind of guarantee can I get?" Southern Cloud Manor. There were less than 2 hours left before the sky turned dark. A gloomy atmosphere shrouded the city, giving people a very oppressive feeling. For the past 2 days, the commotion at night was not small, especially last night. The sound of cannons and gunshots were so dense. Anyone who was not a fool would know what was going on. It must be said that the common people were the most honest group. As long as they could survive, they would not do anything excessive. For example, words like swallowing their anger and living an ignoble life were used by them. However, when something happened and threatened their lives, they would change into a different appearance and reveal their fangs. In other words, the mighty army of the East had awakened. Who was Bugnam of Gojoseon? Needless to say, everyone in southern Cloud Manor knew. There were even many people who yearned for the Yangtze's life and thought of ways to seek refuge there. Originally, Yang Chendong had a good foundation of the people. This time, Yang Chendong was willing to take the risk in order to not let the common people of the 3 provinces suffer from the chaos of war. At this moment, he had won the hearts of the people. This was the general trend that Yang Chendong needed. Now that the general situation had been set, but the 3 provincial kings still wanted to kill Wu and Wang, how could the common people in the city be willing to do so? This was no longer a matter of 2 kings fighting. If things went wrong, the common people in the city would be affected. If they still did not do anything, in the end, the city would be killed. Once such a terrible result appeared in the minds of the common people, who could remain calm. It was at this time that the spies sent by Yang San came into effect. They mixed in with the common people and talked about the powerful relationship. More and more common people felt the crisis. Finally, waves of common people in the city began to rush in the direction of the destroyed courtyard with all kinds of weapons in their hands. Southern Cloud Manor was a big city. Not to mention its history, just the fact that it was the place where the former sheeping mansion and the current mansion of the 3 provinces were located, it had attracted a lot of commoners. The number of commoners here had reached more than 500,000 people at one point. Due to the chaos of war, the proportion of adult men was not high. However, even if the ratio was 10-1, it was still possible to gather 50,000 people. Not to mention, when the matter concerned their own safety and life and death, it was not only the adult men who would stand up. Some of the older men and some of the younger women also stood up together in order to seek a way out. They formed a mighty team and slowly rushed to the courtyard where Yang Chendong was. The kings of the 3 provinces who were paying close attention to the situation in the city quickly reported the matter to Zhu Huihua. In this regard, the kings of the 3 provinces who already had a countermeasure ordered to send out 20,000 veterans and 10,000 newly recruited, able-bodied men to guard the periphery. Once they found that the common people dared to attack the former, they would be killed without mercy. At the same time, Zhu Huihua also gave the last 15,000 soldiers he had left to Wang Zhanjiang. The mission he gave him was to take Yang Chendong's life tonight, no matter what the cost. This was a desperate move, and no one stopped him. Although this was the last resort, at this moment, there was no better way to do it. But what Zhu Huihua did not know was that just tonight, 2 other assassination teams had also started to take action. They were the men of sacrifice of the Mu family led by Mu Ong and the 100 ninjas led by Mo Gue. The men of sacrifice of the Mu family led by Mu Ong have been lurking in the city for several days, waiting for the right opportunity to take action. There was no doubt about it. Although the Mu family also looked down on Zhu Huihua and would take his life if there was a chance. But in the face of a more powerful opponent, Yang Chendong, they had no choice but to work together to deal with this big problem first. For this reason, Muong has made up his mind to succeed or die trying. Fortunately, after 2 consecutive nights of attack, the outer courtyard of Yang Chendong's residence has been conquered, and the range of activity has been reduced a lot compared to before. Under such conditions, once the men of sacrifice of the Mu family rush to Yang Chendong's side, they still have a high chance to kill the target and complete the mission. Let's talk about the 100 ninjas led by Mo Gue. This is a force that no one knows about. Ninjas are best at hiding. In addition to Mo Gue's arrangements, no one noticed them. Even Yang Chendong didn't know about their existence. What's more worth mentioning is that the leader of this group of ninjas is the special ninja who has been on Yang Chendong's death list. This special ninja, who should have died in the assassination of the Timur Empire's General Mandu Latu, has now come to Yunnan Mansion without anyone noticing. In the dark, he is like a poisonous snake. Once he sees the opportunity, he will decisively attack and release his powerful energy. These two dark forces, one left and one right, stared at the dilapidated small courtyard, waiting for the best opportunity to appear. In the small courtyard, Beta Persei, Dao Xiao, Ba Dao Jiang, and others were also doing the final inspection. Years of war made them feel as if dark clouds were looming over the city. Everyone knew that the enemy's attack tonight would only be more ferocious compared to the attack of the previous 2 nights. Fortunately, they have enough firearms and ammunition in their hands, which is their strongest confidence. During the day, they have already dug trenches to ensure that the soldiers can hide in them and kill all the enemies under the premise of enough self-protection. Beta Persei, leave a gap in the east. It was unknown when Yang Chendong had changed into the golden cloak. Although the sky was turning dark, it was still dazzling. Under the illumination of the remaining light, it emitted a myriad of rays of light, giving people the feeling that he was a god descending to the mortal world. Young master, you. Beta Persei was surprised when he heard this. Once a gap is opened, it may give the enemy an opportunity to rush into the small courtyard. If that's the case, it will be too dangerous. Execute the order. Yang Chendong didn't explain too much. Of course, he knew what he was doing. This is indeed a little risky, but if he doesn't do this, how can he find the forces hidden in the dark? Moreover, with his Grandmaster-level skills and the large warehouse that he can use at any time, is there really nothing to be afraid of? Perhaps this is the boldness of the skillful. Not to mention, who doesn't have a backup plan? Since it was Yang Chendong's order, regardless of whether Beta Persei is willing or not, he can only carry it out in the end. A gap naturally appeared in the east. However, it is not obvious, at least not at a glance. This is exactly what Yang Chendong needs. If the gap is too obvious, isn't it the same as telling others that this is a trap? The reason why Yang Chendong chose to take the risk this time is to see if he can find the whereabouts of the traitor. If his defense is foolproof, how could the traitor appear? The Black Cavalry, who have long been prepared for a tough battle, checked the weapons in their hands for the last time. The telecommunications director, Wang Shan, also came to Yang Chendong's side and reported the contents of a few telegrams that he just received. 6th Young Master, Yao Yingjun has persuaded Guizhou Province General Jiang Wuqing and has now taken over their military power. He has also sent 20,000 troops from Guizhou Province to Yunnan Prefecture. 6th Young Master, after a day and night of long-distance attacks, my main army is now less than 300 miles away from us. They are confident that they will arrive outside Yunnan Prefecture before noon yesterday. 6th Young Master, the Intelligence Department has sent news that Guangxi Province General Bai Kuan is now in close contact with the Southern Ming Imperial Court. It seems that there is a possibility of him being instigated at any time. 6th Young Master, listening to the contents of the telegrams read out, Yang Chendong calmly looked ahead. He knew that after taking a big detour and eliminating the surrounding dangers one by one, he would finally have to face the Southern Ming Imperial Court. Okay, got it. At this moment, Yang Chendong did not feel too much joy. After all, once the war broke out, the ones who would suffer would be the lowest class of Han people. It would not be like when they attacked other countries and factions, where they could do anything to achieve their goals. Wang Shan seemed to feel that Yang Chendong's mood was a little gloomy, so he quietly left after replying. On the other hand, Yang Er walked up in confusion and said loudly, "Young Master, don't be anxious. With 500 Black Knight Dragon Guards around, no one will be able to rush up to you and hurt you." Chapter 1575. His originally gloomy mood disappeared without a trace because of Beta Persei's interruption. But it was also at this moment that Yang Chendong thought of telling Beta Persei a few words. Otherwise, with this person's character, he would definitely ruin his grand plan. Beta Persei, if the enemy rushes in from the east later, young master, I will take them out of here, and you just need to guard this place well. Don't worry about me, understand? Yang Chendong said with a serious look on his face. If it were any other subordinate, he would only need to give an order for the other party to carry it out. But facing Beta Persei, who was a straightforward person, some things had to be said more specifically. Why? Beta Persei wanted to get to the bottom of this, But fortunately, he still knew his place and immediately shut his mouth. But this did not mean that he had given up. On the contrary, he said carefully, "Young master, isn't this too dangerous? Why don't you let Dao Xiao or Ba Dao Jiang lead the team? I'd better stay by your side." "No need." In order to dispel Beta Persei's thoughts and not let him take the risk, Yang Chendong said in a very decisive tone, "It's not like you don't know young master's speed. You can't keep up with me. Okay, just follow orders." Beta Persei's face immediately fell when he heard that he couldn't keep up. In terms of skill and strength, the Yang faction could be considered to be full of talents. Yang Air was considered to be one of the top existences. There were very few people who could convince him to submit. Yang Chendong was an exception. The two of them had exchanged countless moves in private. In the past, they could deal with each other once or twice, but now, they could not even last one round against Beta Persei. This made Beta Persei angry and happy at the same time. He was angry because his skills were too weak. He should have been protecting the young master. However, most of the time, he had become an existence akin to a decoration. This made him, who boasted that he was strong enough to establish himself with his fists and feet, lose face. He was happy that the young master had such shocking skills. His safety was guaranteed, so he didn't have to worry so much. In terms of skill, he was indeed not on the same level as Yang Chendong. Although he was reluctant, Beta Persei still agreed. "Yes, young master, but you must be careful. Don't worry. I know what I'm doing." Yang Chendong also breathed a sigh of relief. He was really worried that Beta Persei would disregard his orders and follow him. If that was the case, he would not be able to say anything about Beta Persei's loyalty. Now that he was on his own, he didn't have to worry so much. As for his skills, perhaps it was because he had been reborn, or perhaps it was because he had Daikara with him. In short, whether it was his speed, strength, or reaction time, his body was indeed frighteningly high. In addition, the battlefield and killing techniques that he had learned in his previous life were there to assist him. Unless it was a close-range attack, as long as he had a little bit of time and opportunity to react, no one would be able to kill him. Because of this, he dared to take such a risk. It was also because of this that he dared to open an opening in the face of tens of thousands of enemies with only 500 black cavalry and set an exposed trap for the people who wanted to harm him. Not to mention, there was still the existence of the backup plan. Just now, Director Wang Shan had reported that the backup plan was in place and that they were prepared at any time. With this, now he just had to wait for the enemy to fall into the trap. Perhaps he could use this opportunity to find out the identity of the traitor. Yang Chendong was ready for battle and made all kinds of preparations. Outside the small courtyard, Wang Zhanjiang led nearly 20,000 troops and was ready to charge. They had already failed for 2 consecutive nights. They had sent out tens of thousands of soldiers and dozens of cannons, but they were still unable to do anything to an army of 500 surrounded. Even though the enemy had advanced firearms, Wang Zhanjiang was still not afraid. No matter how advanced the firearms were, they still needed to be controlled by people. He didn't believe that the enemy would be able to hold on for long under continuous attacks. As long as he had the chance to get close, the human wave tactic would be effective, and it would be time for him to reap the fruits of victory. Once he killed Bugnam of Gojoseon, his reputation would definitely soar. At that time, who would dare to look down on him? When that time came, he would be the #1 hero in the world. With this thought in mind, Wang Zhanjiang felt quite excited, and the tiredness that he had felt for the past few days seemed to have lessened. While he was looking forward to it, the sky finally darkened. Wang Zhanjiang, who couldn't wait any longer, ordered the attack to begin as soon as the sky darkened. Fire arrows flew out one after another and flew towards the surroundings of the small courtyard. In order to ensure that everyone's vision was not obstructed, Wang Zhanjiang changed his strategy of fighting in the dark 2 nights ago. He prepared countless fire arrows in advance in order to illuminate the surroundings and find the weak points of the Black Cavalry's defense to find the best path to attack. Thousands of fire arrows suddenly flew up and landed around the small courtyard. Under the connected fire, the small courtyard was illuminated as if it was daytime. The trenches dug in the small courtyard also appeared in Wang Zhanjiang's sight. Good strategy, haha. Wang Zhanjiang laughed excitedly as he instantly understood the Black Cavalry's strategy. During the day, the Black Cavalry used all kinds of methods to conceal themselves and only dug trenches. They only entered the trenches when it was dark. If they continued to attack in the dark, then even if they died in battle, no one would be able to figure out what method the Black Cavalry used. Now that the trenches were right in front of him, Wang Zhanjiang, who understood everything, had a better plan in mind. Men, prepare to light a fire and release smoke. Smoke attack was one of the most commonly used methods on the battlefield. In history, there were many records of victory through smoke attacks. However, because of the many limitations of this method of attack, although it was a good method, there were not many people who used it. But now, the Black Cavalry was surrounded within a certain range, so using smoke attacks was a good method. Under Wang Zhanjiang's order, the soldiers quickly carried dry firewood and lit it. Then, they continued to add wet firewood to the fire. Soon, smoke rose, and under the incessant fanning of the soldiers of the 3 provinces, the smoke began to blow towards the small courtyard. They're going to release smoke. With the help of the night vision device, Ba Daojiang, who was guarding the first line of defense, quickly discovered Wang Zhanjiang's intention. However, he did not panic. On the contrary, the corner of his mouth revealed a disdainful smile. At this moment, if Wang Zhanjiang could stand in front of him, he could not help but scold him for his stupidity. In front of long-range firearms, what was the effect of releasing smoke? Did they not know that all they needed to do was to land a shell on the pile of firewood to solve all the problems? Come on, where are the rocket launchers? Aim them at the pile of firewood and blow it up, Ba Daojiang said with a confident face. The rocket launchers beside him immediately got ready. Before the smoke could completely form, the rocket launchers were already fired at the small courtyard, raising the pile of firewood to the ground. Not only did the smoke not have any effect, but more than 10 people were killed or injured because of the rocket launcher. Wang Zhanjiang frowned. He was very curious about how the enemy could see his movements clearly when the sky was dark and the smoke was thick. Although it was the 16th day of the lunar calendar, the time when the moon was full, he shook his head. Shaking his head, he pushed the unhappiness in his heart to the bottom of his heart. Now was not the time to think about this. There was not much time left for him. If he could not take down young Chendong tonight, he was afraid that his head would be removed from his body. Men, beat the drums, charge. Under the illumination of the moonlight, accompanied by the flames everywhere, the soldiers of the 3 provinces began their suicidal charge. Just like a few days ago, the black shadows were everywhere. The soldiers of the 3 provinces pressed forward with a fearless look. Under the supervision of Wang Zhanjiang, the soldiers reluctantly charged forward. Open fire. The 500 Black Cavalry soldiers were naturally not going to be polite. With a shout, Ba Daojiang, who was in charge of the first line of defense, gave the order to open fire. In fact, after 2 days of fighting, the number of Black Cavalry soldiers was less than 500. To be precise, 13 soldiers were injured to varying degrees and could no longer participate in the battle. They could only stay in the main courtyard with Yang Chendong. Even so, the 487 Black Cavalry soldiers were armed with all kinds of advanced firearms. They were like a piece of metal, preventing the soldiers of the 3 provinces from approaching from all directions. Dense gunshots rang out, and the black shadows fell one by one. This battle made everyone realize the importance of weapons. When the weapons were advanced to a certain extent, it was already impossible to make up for it with manpower. The gunshots continued, and the casualties of the 3 provinces continued to increase. When the news reached the ears of General Wang Zhanjiang, he was calm like an old monk and did not even frown. All of this was within his expectations. Although he did not understand where the Black Cavalry got the firearms and ammunition, he had no choice. In a battle of life and death, in order to give Zhu Huihua an explanation, even if he had to sacrifice all of his soldiers, so what? As long as he could get rid of Yang Chendong, all of this was worth it in his eyes. A general's success was built on thousands of bones. At this moment, there was a clear reflection of the cruelty of war. Wang Zhanjiang personally supervised the battle. If any soldier wanted to retreat out of fear, once discovered, they would be killed without mercy. In this kind of battle where they would die regardless of whether they rushed forward or retreated, the soldiers had no choice. After getting used to obeying orders, they could only hope that they would be lucky enough to break through the blockade of the black cavalry and rush into the small courtyard. The soldiers of the three provincial armies, who had no other choice, showed the madness that they should have when they only had one path left to charge. Although the number of dead and injured soldiers kept increasing, after paying a huge price, they finally got closer and closer to the defending Black Knight Dragon Guards. When they were within an arrow's range, all kinds of bows and arrows began to fly, and the pressure began to increase. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.